We have a new member, Matt Tondell. Welcome, Matt. Dave Rosacker is our vice chair, and I'm Greg Rosenbaum, chairman. Members of the city staff that are in attendance today are Dave Fanslaw, planning director, Eric England, assistant planning director, Mike Carter, current planning manager, Jennifer Taylor of the city law department, and Kathy Epperson is our recording secretary. Our rules of procedure are as follows. Notice of this hearing have been published. Copies of today's agenda are located on the table in front of us. You are welcome to come down and pick one up. The cases on the consent agenda will be heard first. Consent cases have been recommended for layover, have already been heard, or are perceived by the planning board to be non-controversial. Therefore, they will be read and voted on without the opportunity for you to state your opinion on the case. If you wish to have this case discussed during this hearing, you may remove the case from the consent agenda. To do so, when each consent case is read, I will ask if anyone wants the case removed for discussion. If you do, please stand up and say so, and the case will be removed. This case will then be heard after we vote on the cases that remained on consent. When the case is heard, you will have the opportunity to come to the podium, clearly state your name and address, and give your testimony at that time. When hearing cases on the regular agenda, the board will first hear from the applicant. After the applicant states their case, we will hear from the proponents, and then we will hear from the opponents. After both sides are heard, the public hearing will be closed and no additional testimony will be permitted unless a board member requests additional information. When at the podium, please clearly state your name, address, and whom you are representing for the record. Your testimony is very important to us. In the interest of time and courtesy to others, please be short and to the point. We will try to limit each case to 10 minutes. Those directly involved in the case, please speak first. We will request that large groups select a spokesperson to represent that group, therefore eliminating repetitive testimony. When giving testimony, please provide new information and try not to repeat what has been previously said. We do ask that all speakers and others be treated with courtesy and respect. In that regard, please remain silent while seated, and please turn off your cell phones. Our decision to approve, deny, or continue a case made here today will be forwarded to the City Council for another public hearing and final disposition by the City Council. Conditional use permits are an exception to this rule. The board's decision made here today on conditional use permits are final and not forwarded to the City Council. Lastly, upon the advice of the law department, all communications to the board members from attorneys or other interested parties should be transmitted through the planning department so that they are made a part of the public record. The department will then transmit all that information to the board as well as to the rest of the public. A current copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act can be found in a white binder in this room. I'm going to go ahead and get started with the cases that are on consent. Again, the cases that are on consent, I will read them. If you're here for one of those cases and you absolutely want to discuss it today, stand up and we'll remove it from consent. Otherwise, it'll stay on consent. We'll vote as a whole on those cases and no further testimony will be allowed, or no testimony will be allowed. So we'll get started here. Agenda item number 1, case C11-22-44. Applicant Woodsonia, 3902 Dodge LLC. It is on for approval. Request approval of a major amendment to the PUR Plan Unit Redevelopment Overlay District. This was laid over from our September meeting. Location 120 North 39th Street. Does anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 9, case C10-24-240, C12-24-241. Applicant, the Mensch Group LLC. It is on for approval. Requests preliminary plat approval of Rose at Barcalos, a subdivision inside city limits with a approval of a rezoning from R435 to R5, along with a waiver to section 5384A lot depth. Location 4209 and 4215 Allison Ave. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 11, case C12-24-227. Applicant J3F and R LLC, on for approval, request preliminary and final plat approval of Bedford Place replat 2, a minor plat inside city limits. Location northwest of 33rd and Emmett Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay. Agenda item number 11. Thank you, folks.
So we will also pull off agenda 25, item
Okay.
25.
Yep, just getting this. All right. Agenda item number 12, case C12-24-229, applicant ECG Acquisitions LLC is on for approval. Request preliminary and final plat approval of Elmington subdivision, a minor plat inside city limits, location 5504 Kansas Ave. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 13, case C10-16-287, C12-24-230, applicant Jasper Stone, 192nd Dodge LLC, on for approval. Request preliminary and final plat approval of Avenue 1 replat 5, a minor plat inside city limits, with approval of a waiver to section 5399 sidewalks, along with a major amendment to the mixed-use development agreement for Avenue 1. Property is located within an ACI area of civic importance overlay district. Location northeast of 192nd and Burke Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 14, case C12-24-233, applicant Mile High Investments LLC, on for approval. Request preliminary and final plat approval of Scholar replat 1, a minor plat inside city limits. Location northeast of 28th Avenue and Deer Park Boulevard. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 16, case C12-24-235, applicant Milestone Development, on for approval. Request preliminary plat approval of Mason Place Rose, a subdivision inside city limits, along with a waiver to section 5384A lot depth. Location southwest of 33rd and Mason Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 17, case C10-16-287, applicant Jasper Stone, 192nd Dodge LLC, on for approval. Request approval of a major amendment to the mixed-use development agreement for Avenue 1. Location south of 193rd Street and south HWS Cleveland Boulevard. Anyone wish to have this removed? Seeing none. Agenda item number 18, case C10-24-231, applicant Staub Real Estate LLC, on for approval. Request rezoning from GC to CC. Property is located within an ACI area of civic importance overlay district. Location 7105 Military Ave. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 19, case C10-24-232, applicant Skyline Ridge Estates LLC, on for approval. Request rezoning from DR and R4 to DR and R4. Location northwest of Skyline Drive and Stanford Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 20, case C11-24-224, applicant the Minch Group LLC, is on for approval. Request approval of a PUR plan unit redevelopment overlay district. Location 4209 and 4215 Allison Ave. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 21, case C10-24-226. Applicant Planning Board on for approval. Request approval of the ACI Area of Civic Importance Overlay District. Location northwest of North Saddle Creek Road and Northwest Radio Highway. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay. Agenda item number 21. Agenda item number 22, case C11-24-236. Applicant Milestone Development, it's on for approval. Request approval of a PUR Plan Unit Redevelopment Overlay District. Location southwest of 33rd and Mason Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 24, case C8-24-223, C10-24-222. Applicant Greater Omaha Leasing LLC. It is on for approval. Request approval of a special use permit to allow daycare general in the HI district, along with expansion of the MCC Major Commercial Corridor Overlay District. Location 3030 L Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Seeing none. Agenda item number 26, case C14-24-225. Applicant property owner. It is on for approval. Request approval of the vacation of a portion of Olin Avenue right-of-way abutting Lot 1 West Slope Addition Replat 2 on the north, Lot 1 West Slope Addition Replat 1 on the south, and Lot 3 Block 1 Premier Place Replat 2 on the east. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 2, case C8-16-40. Applicant Hanson Property Development, Inc. It is on for layover. Request approval of a major amendment to a special use permit to allow scrap and salvage services in the GI district. Portions of the property are located within the flood fringe and floodway overlay districts, laid over from our August meeting. Location 5940 South 60th Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay. Now, just to remind you, that was on for layover, so we're going to remove that from the consent agenda. Agenda item number 23, case C8-24-221. Applicant Creating Homes LLC. It is on for layover. Request approval of a special use permit to allow transitional living in the R7 district. Location 115 North 41st Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Is that it for the, okay. All right, that's it for those consent cases. Do we have a motion for the cases left on consent for approval?
Motion for the approval of cases 1, 9, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, 24, and 26.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Tondel?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Do we have a motion for the consent cases left on for layover?
Motion to lay over case number 23.
I have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Pate?
Yes.
Tondel?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Okay. So those were the consent cases. If they were left on consent, no further action will be taken today. We want to thank you for coming down. If you came down for one of those cases, you are welcome to stay or you are free to leave. But thank you very much for coming down. We'll get started with those cases that were removed from the consent agenda. I think we're at case 11.
Yep.
and 25. Agenda item number 11, case C12-24-227, applicant J3F and R LLC, request preliminary and final plat approval of Bedford Place replat 2, a minor plat inside city limits, location northwest of 33rd and Emmett Street. And we're going to take 25 with that. Agenda item number 25 is case C8-24-228, applicant James Thomas Sr., request approval of a special use permit to allow a funeral service in the GI district, location northwest of 33rd and Emmett Street. Is the applicant here?
I'm Kyle Hazy with E&A Consulting Group, 10909 Mill Valley Road, representing the applicant. We have two items of discussion here today. One is the replat of the property in discussion, and then a special use permit to allow funeral services within the GI district. Portion of the property is outlined here as shown in this area. It is currently a lot that has been overgrown and not really maintained in the last few years. So one of the benefits of moving forward with this is tearing out the existing concrete and the overgrown shrubs and trees that line this site right now. What we are proposing, this currently is a group of a bunch of different lots. We're looking to have one lot to the north and a second lot to the south. Lot 2, as shown here in the green, or that's colored, is where the funeral services would be contained to, and then this would be this other lot to the north that at this point in time we do not have any certain plans for that. We did have a neighborhood meeting on September 23rd at the library located on 28th and Ames Street. At the time of that neighborhood meeting, we did not have anybody show up for that meeting except for the client and some of their supporters. We are proposing an 18,000 square foot building. We have around 170 parking stalls. Code requires 65. So we're aware that we provide enough parking so there is not any street parking required to cause any issues with the surrounding neighbors. This project was initially approved by the planning board in 2015, but never went forward to city council due to some funding issues and the cost of building at that time. With that, I'll make myself available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
What was the date of your neighborhood meeting?
September 23rd.
Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents?
Good afternoon. My name is Nanika James. I reside and own a property at 3244 Bedford Avenue. I am speaking on behalf of myself and my husband, Paul James, in regards to opposing this motion. As of March 2022, we became new homeowners in the Adams Park neighborhood. My husband is a 20-year retired, 100% disabled veteran who was requested under strict doctor's orders to relocate from the West Coast due to health issues. Nebraska's air quality is believed to have been better for some of his ailments, and now there's a potential for extreme detriments to mine and my family's financial and physical well-being. He's only the second person in his family to achieve home ownership, and now we have to concern ourselves with the construction of a funeral home literally in our backyard. All of the beautification and improvements of this area, which was recently unclassified as a blighted area, will soon be canceled out if this application is approved. No one wants to live near a funeral home, but I would like to state a few additional facts as to why this would have terrible effects on the children, families, animals, and wildlife in this beautiful community and neighborhood. Number one, the building of a funeral home in this area will most certainly lower the property value of our family home. Nebraska studies confirm that homes near funeral homes and crematoriums saw a decline of more than 3.9%. With that being said, when we are ready to sell our home, we will either never be able to sell our home or suffer a great loss when we are able to sell it. The median home price in neighborhoods with cemeteries, funeral homes, and crematoriums are at least 12% lower than similar homes without those entities. We bought this home as an investment, and this project will completely ruin the value of our investment, which happens to be our family home, along with all the other homes in the area. Number two, if this funeral home is equipped with a crematorium, which I am quite sure it will be, crematorium emissions are tremendously toxic to both humans and animals. Noxious substances emitted include fine soot and mercury. Vaporized mercury is released by dental fillings during the process of cremation and is a particularly dangerous emission. Cremation caskets often contain metals and plastics, which create additional pollutants when incinerated. Even with some measures taken to reduce and prevent pollution, cremation is fundamentally toxic and pollutive. The gases and pollutants created by these entities are carcinogenic and proven to cause various types of cancer, including lymphoma, lung cancer, and brain cancer. The EPA estimates crematorium emissions as high as 3 tons every year. Number 3, mercury fumes cause harm to the brain development in children. Our community is full of children of all ages, ranging from newborns to young adults. This area is being revitalized, and the building of this funeral home will shine a blighted eye on what has newly been named North Downtown. So many families, including ours, have relocated to Nebraska to escape pollution in search of the good life. Now we are faced with the battle of saving our own lives from a developer, business owner, who does not set the value in human life, seeing only the value in human death. I'm sure this area was only chosen because it has historically been classified as a lower income area, but that is rapidly changing with all of the rapid growth and improvements. We don't want a funeral home in our neighborhood, and there are plenty of other areas that would be far more suitable in the execution of this project, just not in our neighborhood and community. Number 4, when we decided to move to Nebraska, we searched high and low for a home that fit our needs and desires. My husband is a disabled veteran with standing health issues, and this would have continued extremely damaging effects on our quality of life. Had we known there would be something as tawdry and heinous as a funeral home, we would never have purchased our home in this neighborhood. Adams Park was a huge deciding factor to our purchase decision, as well as the air quality of the area. The approval of this venture will destroy this ecosystem, and over time will bring imminent death and deformities to humans and wildlife alike. The health and well-being of my family and myself are far too important to me for me to not fight against this atrocity. And number 5, we love the fact that we live in a quiet neighborhood, and the traffic created from the placement of a funeral home will completely destroy that element of life here, along with the presence of even more emissions because of all of the additional vehicles that will be moving through our neighborhood day in and day out, because the business of funeral services is never ending. I'm sure Mr. Thomas doesn't want to build this funeral home in his neighborhood. Well, we don't want it in our neighborhood either. This project can be placed anywhere, but it needs to be away from where people live. In closing, I'd like to express my adamant opposition to this project, and we fully support the denial of this application to build a funeral home at the northwest corner of 33rd and Emmett Streets because of the definite toxins, poisons, and traffic congestion that will come along with it. I would hope that every other resident will spread the word to their neighbors in denial of this project. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Quick question for you.
Yes.
So they indicated that they had a neighborhood meeting on September 23rd. Did you get a notice of
No.
that meeting? Where do you live exactly in relation to the funeral home?
If I walk out my back deck, I can see it.
So you should have gotten a notification.
There was no notification. We got the notification from the city planning board, but nothing else.
Nothing else, okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
We'll ask for clarification of that.
Any other opponents? Seeing none, close public hearing. You want to come up and address the concerns?
Kyle Hazy, 10909 Mill Valley Road, Omaha, Nebraska. Addressing some of these concerns, on the concerns of the notification or letter sent out, we did have a title company provide us with a certified list of all the homeowners within a 300-foot radius. of the homes, and those letters were sent out 10 to 14 days prior to the meeting. So everyone within that list should have received that. We did not receive any of those letters returned in the mail directly back to us. As far as locating this business within this neighborhood, the Thomas family has been in business in the funeral home business for close to 50 years. Their current site is located around a mile from this existing site, so they are very familiar with this neighborhood in this area of the community. This is an existing GI site, so there are plenty of other uses that can directly go into this site already that would cause maybe some more disruption to the neighborhood more than this funeral home business would. The toxic fumes technology has come a long way over the last few years as far as fumes that would be emitted in the crematorium practice. The Thomas family itself has lived above the funeral home that they've been a part of as well. And then Mr. Thomas himself is here too, if there's any other questions you want to ask from a route of how his business runs and what the daily tasks are.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. Any additional comments or questions from the board? Eric?
Yeah, sure. So Kyle had mentioned that there was a similar request back in 2015, regarding the air pollutants. I do have some information that I'll probably just list a few items. We do also have representatives here from Public Works that are the experts in this matter. So if you do have specific questions on these, you can definitely do that. But so within City of Omaha, the state of Nebraska delegates the responsibility of enforcing the federal Title V of the Clean Air Act, such as emissions from a funeral home. They delegate that to the City of Omaha. So our Public Works Department oversees enforcement of the act, including permits for crematoriums and other uses that have potential to release the harmful particulate matter into the atmosphere. A crematorium or the funeral services would require a permit from Public Works, separate from a building permit, in order to construct the crematorium. So, this is, funeral services is actually a permitted use in most office and commercial districts. Just because of the industrial zoning, it actually requires the use permit. So, but in other typical areas that are zoned for office and commercial, it is permitted. There are numerous funeral homes throughout the city that are directly adjacent to residential. Anytime you have a industrial zone property, there are buffer yard requirements. So they are providing buffer yard that actually received approval from the Zoning Board of Appeals in 2015. And because the plan is nearly identical, that waiver is valid and represents what the waiver was given by that board. So there are a few modifications related to the landscaping plan that we'll continue to finalize with the applicant. But by and large, the plating is very straightforward for the two lots, installation on sidewalks along all the streets for both lots 1 and 2, and then specifically the special use permit for the funeral services. I can read the recommendation
Yeah, go
report.
ahead,
Like
Rick.
I said, we do have
Take separate
representatives.
votes on 11 and 25.
Yes, that is correct. So this would proceed to City Council, so there would be an additional public hearing and process for the public to attend, or any additional conversations, meetings with neighbors can still happen before that occurs. So specifically for the plating component for agenda item 11, staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 10 conditions in the report, and approval of the final plat subject to a submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement prior to City Council.
Okay, do we have a motion?
A motion for the approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 10 conditions in the recommendation report, and approval of the final plat subject to compliance with the conditions of preliminary plat approval and submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement prior to forwarding to City Council.
We have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Tondel?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore? Morris? Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
For agenda item 25, staff recommends approval of the special use permit to allow funeral service in the GI district, subject to the 5 conditions in the recommendation report.
Do we have a motion?
I'll move approval of special use permit to allow a funeral service in the GI district, subject to the 5 conditions outlined in the recommendation
Second.
report.
We have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Tondel? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Okay, staying with the consent items for approval, I think we're on 21. 15 was taken off. That's on the regular agenda, Dave. Okay. Agenda item number 21, case C10-24-226. Applicant Planning Board request approval of the ACI Area of Civic Importance Overlay District. Location northwest of Saddle Creek Road and northwest Radial Highway. Eric, you're taking this?
Yes, I will speak on behalf, because the city is the applicant, so for several months, and probably even longer, the Planning Department, Public Works Department, Saddle Creek Business Improvement District, as well as City Council Member Pete Festerson have been working on a major streetscaping project in this area as it stretches from North Saddle Creek, from Hamilton Street to Seward Street, or the location of the peanut, as many people identify for that roundabout. So the proposed $3.5 million streetscape will provide improved sidewalks, landscaping, street lighting, and bike facilities. So along with this major investment, both the city planning department, city staff, as well as the business improvement district, think it's important to apply the ACI, Area of Civic Importance Overlay District, to the properties within the BID and office commercial properties in direct relation to this streetscaping project. So as you're familiar with ACI, we have it and apply it for several cases, or it's already in existence. It adds provisions for minimum sidewalk treatments, parking lot landscaping, screening of dumpsters with masonry enclosures, screening of mechanical equipment, as well as introducing minimum standards for building design, including exterior wall materials and increased building transparency. City staff sent a notice to all property owners within the proposed overlay district on August 27th. We had a meeting at the a few weeks after that at the BID typical meeting, and there was no opposition at that time. So I'll leave it at that. And of course, we're recommending approval, but
Okay.
if you have any questions
Thank you, Eric.
afterwards.
Any other proponents?
Hello, I'm Patrick Leahy. I have to be an architect with Emergent Architecture, but I'm not here to represent the firm. I'm here because I'm a member of Waypoint Church and advisor for planning, design, and construction for the church leadership. And we went to that meeting, and we've gone to the previous meetings, and we support it along Saddle Creek, the idea of improving the landscaping, the streetscape, and new buildings in addition. We don't plan to do any additions. We still have space to fit up as we get funds. So we thought there's no downside to this. It's going to help the neighborhood over time. And it might take 10, 20 years for it all to happen, but I figured you don't get a lot of proponents, so I thought I'd come down and, I told the planning department I'd come down and help out. There you go.
Patrick. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any, oh, sorry, sir.
Tom Piper, 4917 Seward.
What was your first name?
Tom Piper.
Tom, thank you.
I got the property there, and I want to talk about some of these changes that they're having in this layover that's going to affect the alley and stuff of grading down there. It's going to take my gate. I've had access through that alley into that property for 35 years, and I don't want to lose that gate just because they want to take and level it out, put a retaining wall, cut my gate off so I don't have access in there more into that area. I have no, and they want to move the gates on Tom Millie's auction mill over to the alley, the corner where where the right cut-in is to the approach and put the gates there. But they want to put the access from easements from 8 feet to 10 feet, which then will affect the gate, where the gates are going to be, or the fence. And that will then have to remove and have to replace them. So I just wanted to make sure that we have the opportunity to talk to the other owners of the area, property owners, and understand what's going to happen here.
I think, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, so Tom, I'd ask you to reach out to us separately from this matter today that's on planning board. What's being voted on today is an overlay related to zoning regulations for future redevelopment. The specifics of the streetscaping project, we can definitely get you in contact with the design officials and public works as well as planning department staff. So
Yeah.
did you receive a notice from us?
I got notices. and then
Reach
they
out to
s-
the planner at the bottom of the page.
And and I reached out to them, and they
Okay.
said they were going to send me paperwork, and
Okay.
they dropped the ball and never sent them more
Okay,
paperwork.
well, it's still ongoing. I mean, the streetscaping hasn't occurred yet, so.
Yeah, I just
just
wanted,
continue to
wanted you
coordinate
to
with us.
take time, let the people, review all these changes in this rezoning, so that they understand what's going to happen here, that they're going to be required to do.
Okay, let's continue to coordinate.
Let's continue, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any additional comments, questions? Eric, did you want to add anything?
No, just staff recommends approval.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris? Yes. Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Tondal?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Okay, I think we're at agenda item number 2 that was on for layover. Case C8-16-40, Hanson Property Development, Inc. Request approval of a major amendment to a special use permit to allow scrap and salvage services in the GI district. Portions of the property are located within the flood fringe and floodway overlay district. This was laid over from our August meeting. Location 5940 South 60th Street. Clancy, you're up.
Oh, my name's Clancy Peterson, 14747 California Street, Suite 2. I represent Hanson Property Development in Upullet, the applicant. This is an amendment to an existing special use permit. It's a major amendment. We're seeking to operate a hammer mill shredder and a secondary device that would assist with the recycling process. This item is currently on for layover. The comments that we got back were a need for a confirmation from the NDEE that there would not be any adverse impacts to the soil or groundwater. We did provide that letter. We also had a comment about a fence, and we have sent a revised plan that connects the fence and fully encloses the property. We are still working on the air quality permit, and we're seeking a layover there so we can continue to work with the Omaha Air Quality Control Division and get that permit applied for and approved. And I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Clancy. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents?
Thomas M. White, appearing on behalf of Forward Nebraska. We do not oppose laying it over, but we want to make clear our opposition to this structure being permitted to be operated in this place at this time with the absence of permits. If the board can assure me those issues will be discussed on whether or not, even if they make the applications, then we have no objection to laying it over. We in no way, however, want to imply that this is a suitable use or the process used to build this structure is acceptable under laws and regulations applicable in Omaha, Nebraska. Is this then a hearing on whether the special use permit shall be granted or simply on whether or not it be laid over? Mr. Chair.
Basically, it's a more about, is it going to be laid over or not today?
Okay. Well, then, on that issue, let me just address the remaining issues to make sure we haven't waived them, sir. I would submit to you that this is a potentially dangerous industrial operation. City of Omaha is currently one of the largest Superfund sites in the nation because of lead pollution, a heavy metal, caused from ASARCO and the Gould battery plants. We're still dealing with the mental health effects on our children, physical effects on adults, and we're still investing millions of dollars in cleaning up what was a pollutant caused by really reckless industrial activity. We do not oppose industrial activity, but we do believe it has to be done carefully in accordance with all regulations before it's undertaken. In this case, this facility, a multi-million-dollar facility, was built in a floodplain. Twice, no, 3 times they received cease and desist orders from the planning department and ignored them. They now have asked, initially at least, that they get a special use permit without even complying with the environmental permits and getting those. A completely inappropriate approach from a responsible industrial operation. Recycling's important. It's good, but it can also be dangerous if it's not done properly. And this city has suffered enough from heavy metal pollution, and these kind of operations, improperly run, present a serious risk of heavy metal pollution. Yesterday, unfortunately, there was a fire at a U-Pullet facility in Lincoln, Nebraska. Now, that had a number of implications that are really applicable to this site. First of all, it's in a floodplain. The fire department would have to come here and flood that site with water. The way it's set up now and where it's at, all of that waste, the oil, the gasoline, the transmission fluid, the fluff from the leftover, which contains heavy metal, what's left over after the cars are hammer milled, all of that will be washed in, just by the fire hoses, will be washed into the Papio and into the rivers. There is no proper setup to control that. We have had record rains. Same thing will happen again. As it's set up now, the fluff, which contains these heavy metals and can be airborne, is uncovered. There are a host of serious challenges that really need to be met because, again, the city of Omaha, the citizens of the city of Omaha want industry, we want progress, but we don't want a repeat of what happened with the ASARCO and Gould battery, where the health of our community and the economic costs that we are bearing even today get dumped on us rather than being borne by the industrial operator. At this point, sir, I don't think the applicant has earned the good faith for you to grant permits until they have fully complied and obtained all permits and established that they intend to operate in a lawful manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents?
Hello, my name is Gab Rima. I reside at 4125 South 13th Street. I'm a resident of South Omaha, and I just have a lot of concerns about the construction and implementation of this project, especially environmental concerns. We're in the middle of the creation of our Omaha Climate Action and Resilience Plan, and I really would love to see more going into like how this would factor into some of those guidelines and restrictions and goals set forth by that new plan. Obviously, I support recycling, but I don't feel confident that this is not going to cause major environmental harm to our city and to South Omaha in particular. Car shredder projects have historically had really devastating environmental effects on the communities that they reside in, and I don't see how this will be different. The shredder being located in the floodway of the Papio Creek system, which runs off into the Missouri River, is really scary to me. And on the air side of things, car shredders are not only associated with toxic hazmat fires, and we know that risk of fire exists because of the fire at the U-Pullet location in Lincoln yesterday morning. U-Pullet was outside handing out flyers saying that these plants are perfectly safe, that horrendous, enormous hazmat fire yesterday morning did not look safe to me. So that can negatively impact air quality for miles around it. And according to the US EPA notice of violation, the General Iron Shredder, which is a project similar to this one in Chicago several years ago, emits significant amounts of smog-forming pollutants, which can have huge impacts on local health. Processing of auto shredder residue produces auto fluff, which can qualify for treatment as hazardous waste. It's a dusty mixture of plastics, foam, textiles, rubber, glass, and can also be contaminated with rust, dirt, and other fluids. After a car is crushed, it can go airborne. In California, state regulators consider untreated auto fluff to be hazardous waste, and they have been proposing requirements for metal shredders to apply for hazardous waste permits. In Minneapolis, there have been complaints about air pollutants from scrap metal shredders in their city, which eventually led to a lawsuit by the state's pollution control agency that cost the owner $2.5 million in fines. And they had to make plans to relocate outside of the city. This feels like a long process to go to just for a disaster to eventually happen and for them to have to relocate anyway. So this project is threatening to pollute our air and our water supply and feels like a really clear example of environmental injustice. And so I would love to see this project put on pause, have a city council public hearing, have more opportunities for public input and outreach, and also have further environmental studies done in regards to the effects of this project. Thank you.
Okay. Any other opponents? You can come down. Come on down. It's all right. Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Stephanie Matthews.
What was your name?
Stephanie Matthews.
Thank you.
I live at 5710 M Street. I sent out an email opposing the car shredder because my community will be disproportionately exposed to hazardous pollution. In that email, I included a letter of recommendations for the car shredder from the Douglas County Health Department. I don't know if everyone received it, but I did bring copies. Am I able to bring them up?
We have them.
Okay, you all have it? Yeah. Okay. Some of the things have already been brought up, so I'm gonna skip some of the things that I have on my list. And I'll just move on to the last final recommendation on the letter, which touches on the company working with the surrounding neighborhoods to agree on practices, times of operation, noise limits, and communication. The company operates up to 12 hours a day depending on the season. So I think that there needs to be some kind of restrictions on the hours in which this car shredder will be operated. So I am requesting that the car shredder is operated only Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And this is just because it's during the time that is least likely to have children waiting at the bus stop because of the neighborhood that's so close. And there is a soccer field that is located just a ways down from this car shredder across the street. So there's practices going on after 4 p.m. on that field. My second request is that every single recommendation in the letter from the Douglas County Health Department is met and required to be met before any permits are given, and that includes any conditional permits. I don't believe any work should be started until all health concerns are addressed. And I wanted to bring up that at the August 7th Planning Board meeting, the attorney representing the car shredder stated that the company wanted to repair the trust and be more transparent with the neighbors who had concerns. But I have yet to receive any outreach from the company informing me of all the hazards that I could be potentially exposed to because of the location being so close to my home. So my third request is that a significant community outreach is organized by this car shredder company, and I'd like to see someone from the car shredder there to represent that company. I'd like to see Commissioner Garcia at this event. I'd like to see a representative for the county assessor at this event and any council members that could attend. I have already reached out to Commissioner Garcia, and he has agreed that if this is laid over, that he will participate in this outreach. The fourth thing I'd like to see happen before any permits are granted is a traffic study to be completed and a plan put in place to address all of the traffic impacts that my community will have because of this car shredder. The last point I wanted to make is that this car shredder stands to gain financially while exposing my community to more hazardous waste than we produce. And on top of all of the health hazards that we face the potential of losing property home value. I am the first in my family to own a home, and I hope to someday pass that wealth on to my son. And so anything that affects that is a big deal for me, and I believe it would be for anyone that is a home owner. Ultimately, I feel that the permits should be denied with all of the concerns, with all of the past breaking of rules that this company has done, with the health risk to my community, and the trust of such a high volume hazardous process should not be placed into a company that has demonstrated no concern for us. But I at least wanted to lay out 4 things for you all that hopefully at the bare minimum they can be required before permitting any permits with this company moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Any other opponents?
Hi, my name's Paige Brooks. I live at 5903 Fay Boulevard, which is pretty much catty-cornered U-Pullet. I have grown up in this neighborhood. U-Pullet has always been a scar on this neighborhood's face. There is 1-lane road going in and out of this place. Funplex is right there. There's this new casino that has been built right there. It is obviously running off into the creek. We are environmentally concerned. I am a neighbor. I have not gotten 1 letter, nothing from U-Pullet stating anything about this. I live right next to it. We are very concerned about the environmental hazards that are going to be released into our air. We're not saying that the recyclers shouldn't be around. This is not the place for it. That's pretty much all I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paige. Amy? You can come on forward.
Hi, my name is Kaylee Sampson, and I live at 6179 Walnut Street in Omaha, Nebraska. I will skip over a lot of what I was going to say because it has previously been stated, and I am in agreement with what has been stated. One thing I would like to add is there was a recent journal article that came out that linked exposure to heavy metals to cardiovascular disease. This was just published a couple months ago in the Journal of American College of Cardiology. And this is in addition to known associations with cancer. So I think the take home there is just to say that some of the pollutants that are being released, it is definitely not well understood what their impact will have on human and living health in general. I have this EPA enforcement alert that I'm gonna put over here just for you to see. And this is just a nice document that does show that these kind of practices can be done in a safe manner if a number of precautions are taken, like having the shredder in an enclosed facility that has negative air pressure. So then when there are openings, the air is being drawn into the facility and filtered and not going out into the air. And I understand this would be a very expensive undertaking, but seeing what has happened with similar shredders across the country, which you may see right here, is they end up paying millions of dollars in fines after they've been in operation and it has been determined that they've been an environmental hazard. So I think that if millions of dollars are going to be spent, it should be to prevent any of this environmental damage from happening, not as a fine after it has happened. As a taxpayer, I would like to see my money not go to things such as lawsuits against the city, because this was allowed to happen despite numerous people coming up and giving concerns about the potential hazards to the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents?
Hi, I'm Teddy Morrison, 3524 Hawthorne Avenue, 68131. It's good to see you all again. I read the amendment. I understand that we're waiting on some studies to come forward, some analyses to come forward before going any place with this. So I just wanted to, again, reaffirm that I'm against this, and to note that 5 days after I last spoke to you, an auto shredder in Los Angeles exploded. This was located near a high school that, on their first day of classes, shrapnel and fine metal particulates went all over their school in the Watts neighborhood. So, though the amendment talks a lot about noise reduction and vaguely kind of mentions they hired James Environmental Management to deal with some of the pollution concerns, it's more than that. It's significantly more than that. It's shrapnel going into schools more than that. So, yeah, that's all I have to say. Take care. It's wonderful to see all these people.
Good afternoon. My name's Barbara Velasquez, and I live at 5620 South 48th Avenue. Again, I don't have a lot more to say because I believe that the opposition has been clearly stated, but I would like to say that if we are able to work with the neighborhoods, I think it'll be very important to consider the diversity in the neighborhoods and consider how to involve Spanish-speaking residents, and I'm sure that Commissioner Garcia can help with that. I appreciate the reminder to me that there are very close soccer fields, but I'd also like to say, as we're all aware, there are many schools in the area, including when I was on the OPS Board of Education, we stated that Ashland Park Robbins was the largest elementary school in the state of Nebraska, and that's very close to this. So all of those kids in recess or with any dangerous explosions that were mentioned would be impacted. And one other point that has come to me is that our neighborhoods, unlike some, involve many residents who have robust gardens. And they would be feeding their families with the produce, sharing. I personally share with people across across the entire city when I have plenty of garden produce. And, you know, I'm always telling them I don't use pesticides, but what if all of this is in the air and falling on my produce? So there's just so many factors here that we would like you to consider to keep our residents across the whole city safe. I was writing letters to remind people to vote yesterday, and I told them that I envision decision makers and lawmakers to care about all people and all communities, and that's why we're here to talk to you about this today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents?
Good afternoon. Jeff Vickers, 5710 T Street. We're actually new homeowners in the area as of last year. Enjoy the area. I grew up in the area, but this has to do along the same lines of everybody else. I'll agree. I'm just kind of weighing in. With the environmental issues, of course, I do echo the statement of the traffic study. There's no shoulders down through there. Not to get off on a tangent through that, but the heavy trucks from Upullet and as well as the landfill further south, sometimes they're really crowding the lines and roads. And I have a younger driver in the family still, grandkids that visit. I just don't want to see an accident before something happens, please. With the increased traffic from the casino on Q Street, as well as the landfill. You pull it. Drawn a blank with the construction company there on the corner as well. I just believe it's, besides the environmental issues with the lead and the airborne stuff, that's really a concern. The traffic study would be much appreciated if you could to address that. There's already a problem with the landfill losing their loads on the way to the landfill, and that's already a problem. But where things stay intact, it seems like on the trucks for you pull it, I'll agree with that. I also echo the statement of the running into later hours of the evening, running their machines. Sometimes 7 or 8 o'clock, I've heard it. So we're just up the street, directly up the street about, one block, 5710 T Street. So we are kind of experiencing something that we realized was there, but not to the extent that we've seen it, I guess. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jeff. Any others?
My name is Don Preister, 4522 Borman Street, and I want to thank all of you for your attentiveness, listening, and for paying attention to this issue. I'm a member of SONA, the South Omaha Neighborhood Alliance, and also work with the South Omaha Environmental Task Force. Both organizations had meetings. They didn't take a formal vote, but members are very concerned about the environmental implications here. The traffic is also a concern. It's a side issue, but I'll just mention, I hope the city and Public Works looks at that section of 60th Street and the amount of traffic that goes through there. And for up to Q Street, it's a wonderful 60th Street. But between Q and Harrison, you kind of take your life in your hands sometimes already and in that area. So, side note, but all of the environmental concerns that have already been identified by some of the neighbors are echoed by many other neighbors and people in the area who are working at this time of day and unfortunately not able to be here to express those for themselves. So I'm speaking on behalf of some of them as well. I echo the importance of having community meetings and having the Hansons, and this is nothing against them, and I haven't heard anything against them. I've personally sold them a car. I've personally bought from them. I've lived in the area my entire life, and so have many of the other neighbors. So we're invested in the community, but we care about our children. We do care about our gardens. Some of us, most of us, like to raise organic gardens, and we don't like to be concerned. The pictures that we saw of the fire in Lincoln were pretty dramatic, and people were even more concerned having seen that. I don't know what the synchronicity is of that fire just occurring yesterday before this meeting, but it certainly highlighted and underscored the importance of making sure all permits, the air quality, everything that's humanly possible can be done before any permits are issued. So again, I thank you all for your attentiveness. I thank you for caring enough to serve on the board, and I thank you for looking out for a lot of low-income people who often don't have a voice or often aren't able to express that voice. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Don. Any other opponents? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Clancy, did you want to come up and address? There's quite a few items.
One thing,
Clancy, name and address.
Clancy Peterson, 14747 California Street, Suite 2. I'm not sure if you can see this, but the fire came up yesterday. These highlighted, there's an 8-inch water main that runs along the side of this all the way up to here. Each of these little highlighted dots are hydrants to connect for fire mitigation. They've planned for this. They're familiar with the industry. I know that there's a lot of I don't know, material that's being circulated out there. You pull it are experts. They've been there since 1986, and they know this industry as well as anybody. As far as the water runoff there, we have worked with our environmental engineer. This is what they recommended. This is the 3-basin filtration system that is going to be constructed in the southwest corner. This is for sediment separation. This is oil separation. This is, I guess, additional sediment separation, and then things will be then discharged out into the basin. But everything that comes off of this concrete block will be treated, including any fire. I think there was a concern about the fire department flooding the area. This is, I believe, overbuilt, and it has the capacity to handle anything that's going to come off of that concrete block. Yeah, so those are, and there are a lot of environmental questions there. We are working with the city to get the appropriate permits. The nearest residence to Upolit is the owner of Upolit. There are 4 generations of his family that work for Upolit. The other people that work for Upolit are also multi-generational. They care because they work there as well. They wouldn't have purchased a machine or proposed something that's going to be harmful to themselves or their neighbors. We're looking to comply with every relevant environmental agency that's out there. The only one that we're aware of at this point is the air emissions. That's the Omaha Air Quality Control Division, and we have to work through our application with them, and that's why we're hopefully being laid over here today, is so that we have a chance to address those concerns. And I believe that has its own public notice and hearing attached to that process. So we probably narrow the scope on those specific airborne concerns during those hearings.
Yeah, Francie, I have a couple questions. Somewhat technical, and maybe it's more involved with your engineer, your environmental engineer. But you mentioned the fire line that goes down through there. Is there any fire management system inside the crusher itself?
There's nothing in the crusher itself. What we have are these 2 water mains that are right here, that are right.
Clancy, can you pull over the mic? The crowd can't
I'm
hear.
sorry. These 2, there are 2. You can't see them very well on the overhead, but there are 2 hydrants here that are right around the shredder, and then these have where the temporary storage will be. There are additional, and it's an 8-inch main, so there's plenty of capacity.
That requires somebody to come and connect the hose and then fight the fire, as opposed to like in a building like this that has fire sprinklers that go off if there's excess heat that comes from the operation.
This is probably something I'd have to ask Jason about.
All right, let me wait for him to answer. But a couple other questions. In addition to that one, the runoffs that you're managing inside that separator, what kind of a rainfall? Like in an industrial situation, we have to manage the first federal requirements. We have to manage the first half-inch of rainfall. But in a situation like that, where you have something more than just runoff, you've got some bad runoff. Is there an excess capacity allowed in there so that you don't have the situation with if we get a 2-inch, 3-inch rain, that everything just overflows that system and goes off into the pathway? Those are my 2 questions.
I don't have the actual specs with this basin. The idea is to put a big curb on the bottom and to overbuild the basin system so that it has the capacity to take everything that comes off of there and filter it. I don't know exactly, I'm an engineer, I don't know those numbers. I could ask and follow up with you on that. But the idea is everything is going to be treated.
My name is Jason Alberico. Address is 529 Bald Eagle Boulevard, Ashland, Nebraska. With respect to the question of the abilities of the actual machine itself to have suppression, There's a 2-inch water line on each side of the rotor. If you did have an event, you would what is called deluge the box. So there's an immediate availability for water without running additional means. That's not to say that you aren't going to need supplement mitigation. However, it is a immediate reaction to an event.
I imagine the heat is such that you couldn't really use a sensor. It would probably overheat all the time.
So the cameras that go into place on these things are military grade, and they're looking at it thermally to see what is going on. Because of the way that the things operate, there's steam coming out the top, so the visibility is going to be obscured a little bit anyway. Those thermal cameras allow you to actually see in real time what's transpiring as the material enters into the box. And just to the effect of fires in recycling, it's not something that anybody wants to encumber, and we're certainly not looking to have a process that is in any way conducive to those events. But you do see recycling facilities across the country faced with this problem, and it's majority due to the micro lithium batteries that are in things now. So typically you have to have something that's going to cause a hotspot. So if there is a cell phone left in something, if there is a vape pen left in something, potentially you have those incidents. We clean these vehicles out. We make sure there's nothing in them. You know, we empty them out. Sure, is there a chance of something happening? It's possible. But we do take all the trash and the personal belongings out of these vehicles, and then we take the vehicles apart. You know, there's several safeguards in place to mitigate these types of events, but certainly it's not an impossibility.
So your operator it's a full-time operator watching, making sure that everything's going fine in there?
100%, the machine has to have an operator. The machine is also monitored digitally back to the company that manufactures it. So if they see a problem on this machine in real time, they will let you know, hey, you have this issue going on.
And then the final one, I guess, sorry to dominate all this, but in the crusher containment itself, the dust and, like you said, the smoke and all those things that are generated from that, is that air filtered before it exits the building?
So different feedstock would require different methods and means of mitigation. So what you put into this is what you're going to get out of it. There's no chemical process that's occurring. The mitigation that you put in place to attenuate anything that would be coming out of it can range simply from water injection to foam injection. There's negative pressure passive systems. There are positive pressure systems that are zero bleed, bag or bagless, and you don't really know what you need until you actually get in there. Similar to the noise study, it's dependent on feedstock. So once these machines go online, they're measured. Anything that needs to be adjusted to make sure that there's compliance with any environmental regs is dealt with at that time. You know, it's the industry's best practice to put a product on that's going to work, not just to speculate.
Okay, so that's because does your feedstock change over time, or will it, once you get on operation, will it be pretty consistent?
So we're an automotive recycler, and at the end of the day, a metal recycler. Our feedstock doesn't change significantly. You know, we are not, I'm not going to name any other companies, but, you know, we're not this company that's taking in regional semi-traffic. We're dealing with our own material. That's kind of what makes us unique. So I guess with that respect, yeah.
And so once you set your machine up for your feedstock, then it doesn't have to change. It pretty much can stay what it is. Or is it adaptable in case your feedstock changes? Can you change those settings?
So everything about these machines is customizable. They're very simple. I kind of touched on it earlier. They're used in multiple applications, you know, from mixing food and aggregate to resizing metal. So you can change the number of hammers. You can change the mass of the rotor. The RPM is pretty static. You can change the grates. Everything that you do is basically to liberate as much of the valuable and recyclable components and minimize what's going to end up in the landfill. That's the whole name of the game.
Did you want to add any more, Clancy?
Unless there are any other questions. No.
I appreciate your time, gentlemen.
Thank
Ladies,
you,
thank you.
Jason.
Thank you. Thanks, Lindsay.
Any additional comments or questions before we hear from Eric? Okay, Eric.
Yeah, so obviously, with the layover in August, there's been additional information that's been submitted, rather detailed study and analysis of the potential sound. Was a great concern with the previous submittal because that did not comply with applicable performance standards in the zoning code related to sound. So we do believe their submittal is very thorough related to that. However, we would not be able to know until if this is approved, in the future by planning board and city council and field testing that. So we will have to wait and see on that. But there has been a number of provisions that have been applied that would help regarding the noise. There's some other items that we discussed in the recommendation report earlier at the pre-meeting regarding fencing and other items related to that. But there are still environmental concerns and items that have not been adequately addressed. So the staff is recommending layover. We spent a good amount of time on those environmental concerns. We do have representatives here from Public Works and the Air Quality Division who are the experts on the type of permit that is needing to be submitted, specs on the device, an entire application provided to that Public Works section in a thorough review to be able to adequately answer the concerns about the environmental air quality and what's being released. Then you also do have the stormwater and the treatment. The applicant provided a brief one-page memo in the past day or two from the NDE. However, we have not, city staff has not had the opportunity to follow up with that state agency and have discussions to follow through on that. So those are probably the two greatest concerns that city staff has at this time. And we can go into as many details. We can call staff up. We do have also representatives from Public Works regarding traffic. So we can help answer, multiple fronts or questions that you may have. But city staff clearly believes that this needs to be laid over to allow the submittal and approval of those proper permits regarding the environmental and the sections within Public Works.
Any additional comments or questions? Do we have a motion? We have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Pate?
Yes.
Tondel?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Okay, we're into the regular agenda now, conditional use permits. Agenda item number 3, KC 7-24-179. Applicant Mental Health Association request approval of a conditional use permit to allow small group living disabled in the GC district with a request for a reasonable accommodation. This was laid over from our August meeting. Location 6055 Country Club Road. And since this is a request for a reasonable accommodation, there are rules and a process that we have to follow. And I'm going to read that process that we have to follow for the reasonable accommodation. In evaluating an application, the city official or board, planning director, planning board, and city council shall follow the steps and apply the analysis set forth in subsection B of this section. Step 1, the applicant bears the burden of proving by preponderance of the evidence each of the following. A, the applicant or the residents of the housing unit that is in the subject of the application is qualified individual with a disability, as defined by this policy and the acts. B, the requested accommodation is related to the disability, and C, an accommodation is necessary to provide the disabled individuals with an equal opportunity to use and enjoy housing because of, number one, the desired accommodation will affirmatively enhance the disabled individual's quality of life by ameliorating, I got it finally, the effects of the disability, and two, but for the accommodation, the disabled individuals will be denied an equal opportunity to enjoy the housing of their choice. If the applicant fails to prove the items in step one, that's what I just read, then the application should be denied. If the applicant proves all of the items in step one, then step two shall be followed. Step two, if the applicant proves all the items in step one above by the preponderance of the evidence, then the application must be approved unless A, the request accommodation would impose an undue financial or administrative burden on the city, or B, the request accommodation would constitute a fundamental altercation of the city's laws, policies, or processes, or C, in the city's effort to comply with the spirit of the applicant's request, an alternative accommodation is approved that provides an equivalent level of benefit and effectively addresses the need for accommodation stated in the application. Jennifer, do we need to read B, C, and D on this?
Sorry. Jennifer Taylor, City Law Department. You can wait on that until the discussion.
Okay, or you want me to just go ahead and read it now?
No, let's
Okay.
go ahead and keep with step one, and then you can have your discussion. We'll go on to step two if necessary.
Okay. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Hello, Tessa Dominguez with the Mental Health Association of Nebraska, 1645 N Street, Lincoln, Nebraska, 68503. Or 68508, sorry, wrong zip code. Let's see. Do I start with my testimony on the conditional use permit?
It's all
or-
together as one case, so you can discuss whatever you feel
Okay.
necessary.
So I'm going to share some information that those of you that have been here before have already heard, so please bear with me. I thought I'd share a little more information since we do have a new board member that hasn't been here for the previous hearings, just about our programs and what we do. So like I said, we are here before you once again to request approval of a conditional use permit for small group living disabled. MHA's mission is and always has been serving individuals living with disabilities with that behavioral health challenge that are seeking support. Our hope for this home is to house up to 8 individuals for approximately 60 to 90 days while they utilize the supportive environment to create their own stable foundation in life. We create that supportive environment by offering a fully staffed temporary housing that provides programming and other supportive services. Our staff are extensively trained. Our organization is CARF accredited, which is the Commission of Accreditation of Rehabilitation Services. As mentioned before, we offer wraparound services and collaborate with several other community providers to assure that our participants have the resources needed to find maintainable recovery. We have successfully ran programs and houses similar to this since our establishment in 2001 and opened our first peer-supported respite house serving the same population in 2009. We do have lots of support in the Lincoln community from our neighbors, city officials, and our local law enforcement, and we do hope to create that same support here in the Omaha metro area. The Lincoln Police Department has supported us with tracking some of the data from some of our different programs, and they can show that our homes in Lincoln and all of our years of services have never had a serious incident occur there. In addition to this, since we were here the last time, we had been asked by some of you to reach out and speak with neighbors again. We have continued those conversations with neighbors. We have also invited neighbors to come to our properties, meet our neighborhoods, or meet our neighbors, meet our staffs. No one has taken us up on that offer yet, but that is a standing offer that will remain available for them if they choose to. We also set up and held another community meeting with neighbors. I think our takeaway from that is that there is some support with some of the neighbors that are directly adjacent to us, but there's still a lot of opposition from neighbors, even though we did kind of explain more about our programs and our organization and what we do.
What were their concerns?
So it's the population that we serve is a big part of the concern, and the schools that are there. And I think that those are concerns that have come up here as well. What I will say about that is that, I just like to remind you guys that there are schools, parks, daycares, nursing homes in all neighborhoods, and our homes in Lincoln are and have been operated near very similar those places, near daycares, next to nursing homes, near schools, and we've never had any incidents in those places. There was some request about who we would accept into our house and who we wouldn't, and so we went through some of those things, and there are some of it that we would be willing to negotiate further with neighbors, and some of it that would really limit us to almost nobody that needs our service to be in the house in order to appease neighbors. So that was kind of a barrier that we ran into.
I was going to ask you the same thing also.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
So can you tell us what agencies or how you're going to get individuals or participants referred into your program?
Yeah. So while we understand that people still serving parole that are still completing their sentence for the Department of Corrections wouldn't fall under this use permit, that would have been the transitional living permit. There still could be people in the community that have been a part of the Department of Corrections that have jammed their numbers, that are on probation. It could also be individuals that are coming out of treatment, individuals that are living in the community that are looking for support. It really is anybody that is living with that behavioral health challenge, those mental health challenges, addiction challenges, that those types of disabilities that need our type of support and service to create a strong foundation for themselves, to, the goal is to get them living in the community on their own. We hope to provide the least restrictive environments possible as we provide that support, and support them in, like I said, creating that stable foundation for their own maintainable recovery.
So did I hear you right saying that some of these individuals might be on probation, formerly incarcerated?
Correct.
Possibly, on probation after being incarcerated? Felons? Any type of individual?
How do you mean?
Well, so define what type of individuals you're going to accept coming out of the prison system or being incarcerated.
Again, that would be anybody living with behavioral health challenges, with those disabilities, mental health challenges, addiction, that need our support in trying to create that stable foundation for themselves.
Could it include somebody that has those things that you just mentioned, but also be a sexual offender?
So that was one of the things that came up at the community neighbor, and I think it came up also when we were talking transitional living application with City Council. That is one of the areas that we're willing to negotiate. I think we've talked about this before, that there are city ordinances, there are state ordinances, there are federal ordinances that tell people on that registry at the different levels that they're at where they can live and where they can't. We do and always have abided by those laws and regulations. People that are on the registry have to report where they live, where they reside. There are regulations in place that protect populations that might be vulnerable to them. However, if we did need a stricter policy on that, that was the one thing that we did tell neighbors that we were open to discussing.
So would you object if I included as part of the conditional use permit here, a statement that just says you will not allow registered sexual offenders
to
be participants in your program?
I would not object to that, no.
Okay, you're on record.
Yes.
What's your success rate?
That's a great question. So it just went out in our report, and I'm trying to remember specifically what those percentages
And maybe define
was.
success first.
Yeah, and it's really hard to track, to be honest with you, because there are some people that once they leave our programs, we have that continued relationship with them for years, right? And then there are other individuals that they come, they get the service, the support that they need, they move forward with their lives, or maybe they move out of state and we lose contact for whatever reasons. There's a multitude of different reasons. So it's really hard to track like what that looks like. But when we're looking at people like successfully, like when they leave our program successfully, part of that is when we're talking about corrections, it's not recidivating, right? It's not committing new crimes or getting new charges. But to us, like, it's whatever recovery looks like to them. So that might be like maintaining free of substances. That might be finding balance in their life with their mental health. It might be finding sustainable stability, like with their income, with housing, with it might look like benefits analysis. If they are on benefits, what does it look like? And they're hoping to work off of disability benefits, what does that look like? And we have programs and services that support them in navigating that process. Or if they're looking to get on benefits, how do we get them plugged in with that? For some people, it's getting an education. It's so hard to track like what success is, because I think that looks different to everybody, what they think that their own success looks like. We're here to support people in figuring out what that looks like for them. If we look specifically at like HANU, which is different because it is transitional living, then our success rates there are, please don't quote me because I'm not sure exactly without looking at our report, but I want to say it was like 78%, something like that. And I could look that up and get those exact numbers to you guys.
Measuring?
What's that?
What was that 78%? What was that measuring specifically?
That they successfully transitioned from our home to whatever their next steps
Whatever the next
were.
step was.
Yep,
They didn't
absolutely.
come back to you.
Correct. Yeah. Well, yes. Yeah. I'm not sure if the don't ever come back is part of that or not, but yeah, yes. Sorry, did that answer your question? I wish I would have brought that information with me.
So to that point, do you know what percentage of the individuals have re-entered into the programs that have been formally cleared?
I don't think that I do have that number. As far as you mean like that come back through our programs, I don't have that number exactly. I can tell you it does happen occasionally, right? We have somebody in one of our houses that's struggling, and we work really closely with other providers in their life to figure out like maybe this isn't the right level of care for them. So they might need treatment. They might, go back into the justice system. There's a lot of different things, or maybe they transition and go live with a family member, but it's not quite the environment that they had hoped for, or, there could be a lot of different things. And what we hope to create is community, right? We hope to create this relationship where they know that our support and our services is always available to them. And so we do have people that come, like they go on, there are other challenges in their life. Maybe they did need to go to inpatient treatment somewhere, and knowing that this is still a viable option for them in that support and that transition as well.
Chester, what's the guest policy that the residents have?
You mean as far as the guests that they're allowed to have?
Yeah, if they are even allowed.
They are. We have guest visitation times that are every day from, I believe it's 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. is how it's written. They can have their guests there at the house. That includes children. That includes family, spouses, friends, whatever. We have some policies around like being in their rooms. They're not allowed to go into other people's rooms, obviously. At HANU, we're very fortunate that we have a backyard with a deck and a playground set and, some of those things. And, those are things that we would also like to have at the new property. I think that when we are thinking about that family reunification piece, that's really important. And having natural supports in our life is very important, because although we hope that that we're always going to be a support and service to you, there's nobody that takes that place more than those natural supports in your life, right? And so we really want to support people in rebuilding and navigating what that looks like to rebuild those relationships. A lot of times when we struggle with, whether that's with our mental health, with addiction, with any of those things, we can burn some of those bridges, right? Or we do damage and people are hurt. And so what does it look like to navigate that and to make space for family, friends, children to to have those very real, valid feelings, and that we can validate that and still work towards rebuilding that trust in those relationships.
I agree, they need support systems, there's no question about it, right? Anybody that's got any kind of addiction or just mental, they need those support systems. But what are your protections that would prevent anybody from bringing in any substances that they shouldn't be taking? Drugs, alcohol, whatever it might be.
So, I mean, I'm not sure what you would be looking for protection around that.
Well,
I mean,
just
I
so
think that.
So they don't bring anything into their rooms, you know, they're taking
Yeah.
drugs while they're in your care.
No, I hear that. And I mean, I don't think that there's anything that I could ever do that would fully prevent that besides a pat search when they come into my property, which is not, I'm not going to search somebody's property. We do have guest agreements that they agree to. We, and our participants agree to a set of participant agreements as well as being in our programs. Our houses are fully staffed. So as far as like, if they're like, our staff is around all the time, and so it's not that it's just completely unsupervised spaces. And so, I mean, I'm not sure what other protection you would look for with that. I think that that would be the same as somebody, my family coming in to visit me when I was in treatment, for example, you know? Those things could have also happened there.
I'm sure you've seen that happen in some of your in your facilities.
I actually can't say that I have, to be honest with you. I can't say that that is something that I have specifically seen. I think that if that's what people are seeking, they usually have means of seeking that outside of our house, and they're not locked in, right? Like they are free to come and go and live their life. And so I don't know why there would be a need for somebody to bring drugs into the house when they could, if that's what they were looking for, they could go get them from them, you know? They are there voluntarily.
Yeah,
Yes.
for goodness, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, no, that isn't something that we've ever caught happening or suspected even of happening, because like I said, you know, they go to work every day, they go to other programming, they go to appointments, they are with their families. There are plenty of opportunities if they're looking to seek those things that they can do that outside of our house. So I would assume that that's why that's not something that we've ever seen.
Okay.
Tessa, if somebody's not working out in the program, what do you do? How do you monitor that? How do you make a decision? Because, you know, that's what a lot of neighbors are worried about. If somebody's going to get loose and do something,
yeah.
How do you keep everybody protected, including the individual themselves? But and then when you do find something that's against the program, is it you're gone? You have to go somewhere else, or how does that work?
So it's all individualized, right? And it's a case by case, just depending on what the situation is. But we work really closely with other providers in the community to figure out like what is the safest space for them to be in. And it might not be our house, right? Like then we might contact the detox centers. We might contact, if they're on supervision or have caseworkers or other support services in their life, we'll contact them and work together. If there's somebody whose mental health has their mental health challenges have increased to be at a level that's beyond our level of care, then we'll work to get them to a place where that can serve that level of care that's needed. There's never a time that we would just put somebody out on the streets. We would work closely with other community providers to figure out what is the next best step for these individuals. I don't know if I would say often, but I can't say that it doesn't. It does happen, right? We might have somebody that drank a couple shooters on the bus and showed up at the house, right? And then we need to talk about that, and we need to address that, and we need to figure out where is the safest place for you to be right now, and how are we going to get you there, and what does that look like? And there's a whole process that goes into that. It's never just a rash, you have to leave, you're out type of decision. That's not how we've ever done things. Yeah, but I mean, it does happen. I mean, we just had an individual at one of our houses not too long ago that their mental health became more like they were struggling more and more with their mental health. Some of those symptoms started to present themselves more because our staff spend every day with them. They were able to see some changes in behavior pretty quickly and start the conversations of where are we going? What are we doing? How are we going to address this? What does this look like? And we have to balance what is in the best interest of our guest, the rest of the guests in our house, our staff, and that individual, as well as the community. So we try to figure out what does that balance look like and where do we go from here?
Thank you.
There's usually a lot of players at the table. It isn't just us, which that's thankfully, right? It's not just us making decisions about people's lives. There's usually, I would say most of the time, other entities that are involved in each person's life at that stage.
Any other questions?
Just make a comment.
All right.
Yeah.
Mental health is a big issue. Thank you for what you do. I've been tough on you.
That's all
A
right.
little bit, I've been tough on you, but it is an issue, and I hope your programs are successful in rehabilitating people because it needs to be addressed. It's a huge issue. So thank you what you do. I'm trying to protect the community as much as possible with some of the things that I talked about with this.
Absolutely.
But your programs, if they're successful, are very valuable.
Thank
I
you.
just want to let you know that, okay?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Tessa. Any other proponents?
Hi, I'm Jason Whitmer, Whitmer. I live in Lincoln, Nebraska, 1224 North 26th Street. I'm just going to talk a little bit, and you can ask me any questions you want. I do want to say groups I'm affiliated with, my employments, etc. This is my personal testimony, so I might bring up a name, but it's not. That is their testimony. So first of all, I will say I myself, I'm born and raised in Nebraska. I lost my mother to domestic violence. Eventually, I went into the system, so I grew up in the foster homes and then started making the decisions that put me in prison. So my fault to the degree of them decisions that I made, which involved gang-related activity here in Omaha, Nebraska, and in Lincoln. And so I did quite a bit of time. I'll say about 20 years. 2016 is when I was released. Before I was released, for years I was doing something different. I am getting to why we're here. So part of that something different was involved community service. So I chose, upon getting out, because of people inside that had invested in me and years of growing me and maturity, that when I'm getting out, I'm going to do something in the community. It didn't really matter who. I just wanted, and so I started getting involved in groups. I moved to Lincoln, Nebraska. At some point, I came to, I believe it was actually, I don't believe, I know it was Tessa Dominguez actually was talking about the Mental Health Association. So while I was working construction, I was volunteering with them. And at some point, 2017, I got a job with the Mental Health Association, and I became, I started helping individuals get employment and maintain employment from the vocational rehab side. They had two sides, vocational rehab and those who are coming out of incarceration, which I thought, oh, I'm a great example. That's who will work with them. However, they said, we'd like to try you on this side. So that dealt with individuals with mental health, going on with mental health. I have my own mental health, but it worked very well. I did it for years. There's something about the whole dynamic of helping that also helps yourself, of being able to tell your story a little bit without burdening people with your story, if that makes sense. So you just heard briefly, imagine if you came to me and we had sort of similar story, and then I started telling you all about what happened to my mom and all about what happened to my life, and you're like, I really just came for some help. I love that we have a similar experience, but I came for some help. So I've learned that through the organization. And several years later, I came to coordinate what is known the KEA House, K-E-Y-A. This is a hospital diversion house that works with system Region 5. So Region 5 systems, correct? Region 5 systems for individuals dealing with serious mental health concerns or moving into it that often will end up into the hospital. And that will cost, it usually costs the county just a lot because most people can't afford that. So they could come to our house with the peer support that we offer 24/7, and have a place to stay or just somebody to talk to. So I coordinated this program as well as worked the program. And part of what I want to say, because this is where HANU, which is a reentry transition house, and the Kea House ran kind of similar with different programs. And that is, we're not just saying that we work there as staffs. Trained, we have trained and peer support. We're not just saying we're there, but we're actively engaged with not only with the individuals and figuring that out, with LPD, Lincoln Police Department, got to where they would call our real program, which is a program where the police would engage with somebody and decide, we'd like not to have this call. Let's call the mental health association and have one of their people meet this person. Hopefully we don't have to see them again. In our program, they're like, well, okay, we're dealing with this person like this. Do you have a place for them to stay? We feel like they would fit your program. So that's very often, enough that it's a personal basis with many of the management in mental health association and the police department, so that they have a close working relationship. That's also in the HANU house. But also, I would like to say that, and I'm sure there's some neighbors here because you're probably at the end of your list, close, but we didn't just go out and meet the neighbors. It became a working relationship. If there was an issue, any sort of concern that something come up, a person could come talk to us. They didn't feel like they was coming to talk to an organization, like, hey, you know, who in your organization I need to talk to. I would talk to the neighbors all the time, mow the lawn, we'd have events together. We did we're in the neighborhood association, not just to see what they're doing or just to present something so we wouldn't have a problem, but to build community, and the greatest community. So the Kea House went into a community that was not very happy about that. So we went into talking, and we went into before it got put in, because that's something MHA does that other organizations don't do. They try to sneak it in and then deal with the problem. We try to present it and talk to the community and work on that. And in doing so, we build a deeper relationship. That way, if something was to occur, which I have not seen yet, something on no major level, maybe somebody outside that's upset, the neighbor is concerned, but I have not seen physical violence. There has never been, so MHA has been in service for over 20 years. The Kea House is, I'd say, about 2008. The probably roughly the same, the transition. There has not been no assaults. And that's because we don't just process people in and not build relationships with them. We don't have people doing intakes with us and not already have probably multiple organizations connected to them, whether somebody's on parole or somebody's therapist that want to get in connection with us. So with that also being said, just back to mine, being involved in both working with them and some of their services, I am now a homeowner. So again, I have a violent history. Somebody that would be said, don't live in my neighborhood. I know half of all the organizations personally that work in neighborhoods in town. I'm currently a policy fellow, so I will see whoever's a lobbyist here at the Capitol if they have not already seen me. I'm employed with the ACLU of Nebraska, so all lawyers, except for me and a few others. And it's because of support that had gotten me to the point where other organizations and other people were like, yeah, and myself, I will give myself a little credit of, you know, growing as a person and saying, yeah, we want you involved. And we want to see this in Omaha, because as we know, we can't deny that when it comes to when it comes to incarcerated population, a majority is coming out of Omaha. But that also means a majority is also returning to Omaha. And when we say about success in Lincoln, people should be thinking, I don't want just Lincoln to have that success. I want that to be involved in our communities here and reflected on organizations that are not just doing the work where we have people coming in, but are doing the work to make sure people have the best chance to be successful. And if there's an unsuccessful case, they're actively involved and not somehow hands off. Washing our hands like, you know, we did all we do. We're not, you know, that's not our responsibility of what they ran out and did. We're fully invested, or they are fully invested. I am no longer at MHA, but yes. So that's what I want to say is, I've firsthand seen it. And I believe if people, maybe if you should talk to them off the record, I don't know how on the record the police want to be, but ask the LPD. They firsthand seen it. Ask Centerpoint. Maybe they'll speak on it. They firsthand seen it, as we have seen their work. The work that's done here at the Mental Health Association is very, very hands-on and about the best success you can get for engagement in the community like this when it comes. So my biggest hesitation is anytime it becomes not our neighborhood, because that's no longer a community thing. That's more of a segregation type behavior. Is like, we want all the problems to be in your neighborhoods, not our neighborhoods. However, the neighborhoods that invest in this, we also show up when they say, hey, I have a neighbor here that I have maybe you guys can make a relationship. Not a person in our program, but we build these relationships where we can do outreach like that. And I promise you, if we start looking at the dots in the neighborhoods, I bet this neighborhood has quite a few dots in it that would show up on not in our neighborhood, but probably built community members, I would hope to like. And we could be just as much a community member as anyone else. So although I don't work for them, I would still be willing to volunteer to show up if there's concerns that they would like having somebody else to get involved in something. I think this is a great organization to work with, and your support would show that. We want organizations that are very hands-on and not these few pop-up that are just putting people in houses and having somebody show up and go, and then the problems build and build because it's not as hands-on as this is. So if you have any questions, I don't know if I spoke that well. Sometimes I'll readdress something I said like 60 times. But
spoke real well.
It's not a terrible behavior of mine no more. So yeah. So I appreciate you letting me speak, and if you do have any questions, I'll answer them.
Jason, you spoke real well, and congratulations on turning your life around.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great job.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents?
Thank you so much. My name's Tom Bolig. I live at 6120 Country Club Road, 68152. I have a hard stop at 3. I usually speak very quickly, and I'm about being fair and reasonable in life. And back in March, when this original proposal was turned down by the city council, we were pretty relieved in the neighborhood. And then there was a new item that came forward that was involving people with disabilities. So quite honestly, I feel like this is an end around to do the same thing that was proposed before, just calling it something different. So I'm just going to speak about a few things. And I do want to say, it's easy to say not my neighborhood or why not your neighborhood. We're all affected by mental health. I ran a nonprofit for 10 years that dealt with a lot of people with major issues in life. And the challenge always is, when you ask the question, what's your success rate? That's a realistic thing to ask. And when the response really isn't a response, well, what's success look like? That's a little scary for me. I have grandkids. There's an elementary school within walking distance, Springdale Elementary. Yale Middle School is like 5 blocks away. There's no guarantee of who's coming in and who's going out, good, bad, or indifferent. Honestly, after hearing the testimony today, I'm more concerned. I thought we'd be coming down here talking about what's a disability. Why is this a disability? This is the same proposal that was on the table that was turned down by the city council. This is on the website by the MHA. It is a nonprofit, peer-oriented, and participant-driven organization dedicated to serving and providing alternative programs to those who live with mental health and/or substance use and addiction issues. It has nothing to do with disabilities. How you categorize a disability, I guess that's the question, but this has just been a simple move to take something that was rejected by the city council and now take it down to the planning level. As a neighbor, that I see this home every day, I can't say that I would support that in any way. There's just too many risks, especially after considering this sounds like a very loosey-goosey setup. You can come and go as you please. One of the major issues always with people coming out of addiction isn't so much of them. They typically are doing their best and they're sincere. Often it's the ones that come looking for them, old friends, old acquaintances. And that's when things can get out of hand. You know, I don't want it to be the one situation on my block where someone gets hurt. There are no guarantees in life. And it's easy for me to say not my neighborhood, but the reality is this is not a good location for what's being proposed. This is a residential neighborhood near schools. That's my final comment. I appreciate the time.
Hi, Jason Caskey, 6038 Country Club, Oaks Place, 68152. I am an attorney. I'm a partner at QTech Rock, but I'm speaking in my personal capacity as a member of the community affected. I'm going to be honest with members of the board. I'm slightly confused and also experiencing a bit of deja vu. As the chairman discussed, you have specific rules that you have to go through for the conditional use permit, small group living disabled, and your first one was to determine whether the applicant, on a preponderance of the evidence, has demonstrated that they're qualifying individuals as disabled and that they have programs to deal with it. I think the preponderance of the evidence that has been demonstrated by the applicants is that they lost their application in front of the city council, and they've taken their program that is for individuals that are recently incarcerated that have drug and mental health issues, which they're doing a yeoman's job, great things for these folks. But they've been denied before the city council for this, so they thought, as my neighbor just said, we got to take another stab at this and we're going to go before the planning board. I don't think they've hit what they're doing. The use of the term disabled in common parlance may include having mental issues. It may involve substance abuse. But under the state of Nebraska, which has adopted the federal definition of disabled, it's a very, very rigorous test. And nothing was talked about the qualifications of these individuals as disabled as defined under state law. We're not here today to talk about all of the lovely things they're doing and the great things they can do for their constituents. We're here to talk about this conditional use permit for individuals that are disabled. And I don't think that the evidence, it's not the preponderance of the evidence demonstrates that what they're doing is what they've always done, which is helping individuals who are recently incarcerated and that have mental health issues and substance abuse issues get back on their feet. It's a temporary, these people are there for a calendar quarter. It's very transitional. It's built into their program. And the elephant in the room is this was within 500 feet of the playground for Spring Hill Elementary, which was the deciding factor in front of the city council. What they're doing is great. Where they want to do it, it's not great. In addition to that, we're not close to any bus lines. We don't have a lot of the other sort of things that these individuals who are struggling through their troubles. I'm not going to go as far as say their disabilities, because the definition for disabled that you guys are being held to make this determination, I don't think it hits that. But their troubles, this just isn't a great place for it. The only thing that this facility fulfills is it had been a group home for children for Boys Town, I think. And so it already had the bedrooms. It's a nifty physical plant for what they want to do, but the totality of the circumstances is not great. And I think with the burden that you listed before this hearing began, I don't even think you get to step number 2, because I don't think that they have met their burden, which falls on them, that they're qualifying individuals as disabled and they have programs to meet the needs of individuals that meet the definition of being disabled. The definition of disability, it's not for me to define. It's the state statute specifically incorporates by reference the federal definition, and it's really long, and I'm not going to pretend that I've memorized it. I'm a technology attorney. So I've already been, vilified in the press for my discussions before the city council. If you deny it, they have an appeal, and it goes back to the body that's previously rejected their application. So I urge you, based on the charter of what you've been challenged and the proposal that's before you, I don't believe that they have met their burden, and I think that you, as a matter of definition and charter, need to reject their application. Thank you for your time.
All right, come on up. Your opponent? Yeah, come on up.
My name's Susan Pizzo. I live at 6132 Country Club Road, Omaha, Nebraska 68154. I would really like to address some concerns I have regarding the interview with WOWT on June 3rd, 2024. In fact, he happened to mention he was on there. One of the things was, however, the Omaha City Council had the final say. After a lengthy, heated public hearing, the City Council said no to a permit. Don Rowe, at the City Council meeting, said, "I would like to take a moment to applaud both sides. This is a contentious conversation that we have had this afternoon. There are communities in the county, or the country, that things could have gotten out of hand." So it wasn't really contentious. The other thing is, let's see. Tessa Dominguez calls the denial a clear case of discrimination, and this other gentleman mentioned it too. Yet, at the April 5th, 2023 Planning Board meeting for the house located at 4810 Polk Street, neighbors voiced the same concern and used the same language, but she didn't go after them. I'm sorry, but true. You've heard it today. People that came up and opposed something, not in my neighborhood. But what she didn't bring, or what the news didn't say, is like in his case, Councilwoman Moulton and another, well, I don't know the other gentleman, because he was against everything that the city council had to bring up. I don't know if he goes to all the city councils and just does that. But oh gosh, I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. My son has been on life support for over 2 weeks, and they're finally doing got his body to where he could do it. So if I cry, I'm so sorry. But
Ma'am,
the last thing I said.
Ma'am, if you want to take a seat and compose yourself, we can call you back up if you want to speak again.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
But I just think it's so important.
Any other opponents?
Hello. Paul Kolkman, 7820 Fairway Drive, Omaha, Nebraska, 68152. I want to thank you all again for your time today. I know it's been a lengthy discussion again. I won't rehash everything. Since our last meeting, I've had a couple of cordial conversations with Casey Parker, their executive director, and went to the neighborhood planning meeting. I appreciate those discussions. However, what the discussions have highlighted me is this is truly an unsafe project, and not really different from the halfway house that was almost unanimously defeated at the city council. Per her own admission, Casey stated that they would have to look at filling the house with individuals who are not on parole, as we discussed here today, but those who have, quote, jammed their number or their time in the prison system at the penitentiary. This is often individuals who have been denied parole, and often individuals are denied parole for misconduct. So that is who they would look to fill this house with. She even admitted that this is more concerning than when they have parole officers or police more readily available at a transitional living facility. When asked if she would exclude those at the neighborhood meeting who have, quote, jammed their number, that was denied. At the neighborhood meeting, it was also asked if she would exclude sex offenders, and she did give a little bit on that, which was appreciated. However, she said, if they did that, can we just go back to the transitional use and have your support? Because we really want to put this as a transitional use facility. That shows their true colors, what they want with this project. And that was almost unanimously defeated. Quite frankly, this board also voted against it once already, and then it was laid over. When asked Casey what happens if something goes wrong at this house, what if this project fails? Her answer was, that's the risk of doing business. With this, I couldn't disagree more. In medicine, when something goes wrong, we don't just throw up our hands and say that's the risk of doing business. We do everything we can to prevent it, address it, and make sure it never happens again. Lives are not just the cost of doing business. Children are literally at risk right across the street. Neighbors are at risk. The Hanu House in Lincoln, you asked for some statistics, Mr. Morris. They came at the neighborhood meeting with these. Had 101 guests in the year 2022. There were 17 calls for service, for emergency services there. That's almost 1 in 5. The recidivism rate of this group is over 20%. There will be felonies committed there if we are filling it with people who have jammed their numbers. Once again, right next to a school. This also does not, as stated here, meet the definition of suitable living. This house is not located near convenience services for the residents that would be there, preferably walking distances to bus routes. And lastly, as we discussed previously, as you stated in number 1 point, Mr. Rosenbaum, was what qualifies them as disabled? Who diagnosed them as disabled? I used to do disability exams for the state of Nebraska. All of them going to be diagnosed as disabled by the state of Nebraska? Are they all going to be on Medicaid because of that? They haven't proven that. They have not gotten to that point. Please do not be fooled. This is not about a disabled house. This is about a halfway house across from a school that's been previously defeated. It does not have the proper personnel to truly function as a disabled person's facility, which often requires nurses, doctors, security. There's a proposed Dunham house in our neighborhood that I think was also on the agenda today. That's for disabled vets. What you don't hear is the neighborhood standing up here arguing against that. That is a worthwhile cause that does not appear to endanger others while dealing with the disabled. What we are against is putting violent criminals and addicts next to a school in a residential neighborhood. Thank you for your time.
Question
Mr.
for
Pate.
Paul, is it Paul?
Yeah.
Question for you, Paul.
Mhm.
I think I heard you right when you made a statement. Were you at the meeting?
I was.
Okay, so this isn't hearsay when you said that Tess indicated that she really wants to use this as a transitional use facility.
So that's correct. She said, well, if we agree that no sex offenders would be there, could we just go back to this being a transitional living facility, asking the neighbors if we would be okay with that? And the answer was no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Any other opponents?
Eric Kruger, 7520 Fairway Drive. I only came up here for one reason, Mr. Pate, and that was to confirm what Paul just said, is that the executive director, Casey, I think is her name, and Tessa both stated to the group that was assembled last week up at the church that their preference was to have this be a transitional for convicted felons.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents? Yeah, come on up, Susan. You'll have to give your name and address again.
I don't need to?
You do.
Okay. Susan Pizzo at 6132 Country Club Road, Omaha, Nebraska 68152. I don't remember if I got through the discrimination part. Maybe I did. But it's not just the neighbors that are doing that or the city council. I mean, everybody that stood up and has been against something has, according to your terms, discriminated against them. Again, I'm probably going to just blow it, but again, in each one of their, each one of the circumstances that was mentioned on WOWT, including the gentleman back there that had got up earlier, it was left off. Okay, maybe they said, not in this area, this is not a good location, whatever. But what was left off is in each of those cases, and all the other cases that didn't get on the news, was the school. The reason why they were against it was the school. It's not just that it's so many feet away. If you were in their yard, you went across the street, there's a house, then there's that church. If you were moved her house to the other side, there'd be a house and a school. It is very, very close, and behind it is like a park-like area that the school does own. I don't know if any of you have driven around the area, but so it's got nothing to do with who's in there, but the children, and especially with the incidents that keep happening at the schools. I mean, we just had a shooting here, and Springville was one of them that got locked down because of the proximity to where it was done. And so OPS is actually looking at, what can we do for safety issues? And when I did ask, about what at that meeting, the neighbors' concern, I mean, they're parents that are sending these kids to school. There are kids that are afraid to go to school. But their thing was, and I can understand it, they can't, take care of that problem. But in a way, they really can. They don't have to be there. It's one more element that you're putting in front of these children, in front of these parents that, are getting afraid to even go to a public school anymore. There's been over 50 shootings, over hundreds of incidents in the United States alone at schools. It just takes one. And to me, mental health is even more concerning because they are on drugs, and if the drugs aren't just right and you don't know for months, they could just go off. And I do realize that, 1 in 5 people in our community have mental health issues. But I don't believe that they're at that level, that they need to go, to their home or something. You know what? I think what you guys do is really good. And it's just upsetting to a lot of us neighbors that we feel like they don't listen and nobody listens. They want us to listen to them, but they don't want to listen to us. And just like with the meeting that you guys had August 7th, no one was notified. And she admitted that she did not notify any of the neighbors. So this was kind of coming under the gun. And now we found out just recently that, I think it was Friday night, that the city council isn't even going to look at this. We just feel like we're just being thrown under the bus and nobody really cares. But when it comes to children, I do care. She also said, that their program is successful because they are in safe neighborhoods. Well, we just found out that our neighborhood's not as safe as I thought it was. The church that they held the meeting at, the building director there said that they have people that use their parking lot to sell drugs. Just down the street is a gas station where they'd have to walk to, by the way, to get even past that to get to a bus stop. They have drugs there. They have solicitation. I was really better off not knowing what our neighborhood had. We had a murder on our street, and I know that's been mentioned before, and it was over drugs. And then you hit Sorensen Parkway, and then people call that the ghetto. There's been a lot of shootings there, incidences, murders. Our streets do not one street in our neighborhood has street lights. Not one. And that's very dangerous at night because I've had to walk around holding a flashlight. What if I walk my dogs early in the morning or something? Also, it kind of concerns me now, huh?
Susan, can I ask you to wrap it up here shortly?
Oh, okay.
'Cause we got a lot of people waiting for other cases, so if you would, please.
Okay, she did mention, I'll just end this then with the emails. She did say to the city council that she was going to utilize, somebody had showed her or told her how to send mailings out through zip codes. She did not do that for the August 7th meeting. She didn't even do it for this one. Luckily, she did send something to our president, and we did get something through that. But it just seems to us that it's going under the board, and I don't understand, and I don't know anything about you guys, but how it could just go through the planning meeting and not the city council.
Okay, we'll let Eric get to that. This is a conditional use permit, but I think we understand your sentiment.
Okay.
Is there any last, okay.
No,
Thank you.
no,
right,
just
thank you,
you so much for
Thanks for coming down. I
dealing
know
with me.
your
Like I
world's kind of turned upside down.
Yeah, and that's why to me it's so important to come here.
Okay. Any other opponents?
Tom Dutterer at 6132 Country Club Road in Omaha.
Tom, can
Yes.
you speak up a little bit or kind
Oh.
of pull those mics in toward?
Sure. Is that better?
Yeah, I think so. Let me hear
Okay.
you.
I have to improve my diction. Anyway, I'm asking that you all just deny this request, for several reasons. I'll just keep it short, but due to the fact that you previously denied it, as well as the the city council denied this, I think the risk is greater than any kind of benefit that they can try to, come across with, due to the fact that it's an increased risk of violent crime. At this location being within, like Susan pointed out, within walking distance, of one elementary school and 3 other schools. And I just, for your information, I'd just like to give you a report from a research program conducted by a Professor Lee Logan at Grinnell College in 2022. And he found out that residential housing does not reduce reincarceration, and that residential housing actually increases violent crime by about 70%. And so that being said, and I'd like to request that, for future or even now, that the Mental Health Association would, be specific in the type of disabilities, because just in support of a previous, I know he was an attorney, I can't remember his name.
Jason.
But according to Nebraska, a disability is defined as a physical or mental impairment that significantly limits a person's ability to engage in major life activities. This includes activities such as reading, writing, learning, thinking, hearing, seeing, walking, or talking. And then in association with that, there's, I'm doing this off the cuff, but the state of Nebraska, as well as National Institute of Health and the Social Security Administration, have a variety of different classes of mental disabilities or disabilities in general. And especially it's concerning to me that if they're all under doctor's care and supervision, then a lot of these disabilities are managed and controlled by medications, and a lot of the medications are controlled substances. So that brings another layer of complication to it, because now they're required to take care of any kind of controlled substances according to the Controlled Substances Act. And we were told at the meeting at the Olive Crest Church that any medications they might have each person, if they have medications, or just have their own little lockbox. Well, that doesn't fall under the what the Controlled Substances Act says, that they have to have specific regulations for the control and dispensing of those. Anyway, I'm done, and I thank you for your time, and I appreciate you all being here. I don't know how you do what you do. Thank you.
Any other opponents? Seeing none, a closed public hearing. Tessa, give you the opportunity to come up and address any items you want to.
Tessa Dominguez, 1645 N Street, Lincoln, Nebraska, 68508. I will just speak to a couple of things. One, our organization was established in 2001. Our priority population is and always has been people living with behavioral health challenges. I think that gets kind of confused about what does that mean, what does that look like. We didn't actually start working with the Department of Corrections until 2015. And again, the population has stayed the same. It is people like it wasn't that we switched from community to corrections. We expanded all of our programs to serve both community and corrections, but our priority population is that behavioral health challenge. I think that there was something mentioned about, Casey talking about, being supported to do transitional living. Is there a day that we would love to not discriminate towards individuals living with these disabilities that are also on parole? Absolutely. That application was denied. So I'm here before you today to talk about how we would like to utilize this property to still serve the population that we have been serving since 2001. There was a lot of questions about what is a disability, and I didn't intend to. I filled out the reasonable accommodation application. I turned that in to all of you. I didn't intend to recite any of that up here because there's a lot of information, a lot of work, and a lot of writing that went into that. But the one piece that I will read is that the individuals that this housing is intended for live with mental health and or addiction impairments, which are recognized as disabilities under the American with Disabilities Acts of 1990 and amended by the ADA Amendments Act of 2008, as well as the Fair Housing Act and other federal, state, and local non-discriminatory laws. The statute reads, the term disability means, with respect to an individual, a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities of such individual, a record of such impairment, or being regarded as having such an impairment. That is the definition of people living with disabilities. And if we look back to the Olmstead Act as well, the Olmstead Act talks specifically about people living with these challenges, with these disabilities, being in the most least restrictive environments possible as they navigate what sustainable, stable recovery looks like for them. And so those are the principles that we stand on and the population that we try to serve. Lastly, what I will speak to is that I've worked with Casey Parker for 8 years, and I feel very confident in saying that I don't think that she would ever speak so flippantly about individuals' lives as to say that that's just a part of doing business. I do believe that we can say that, like, no, we cannot promise you that there will never be anything that goes wrong at one of these properties, right? But I can tell you that in all of the years that we've been in service, we have never had a serious incident at one of our homes. We did provide the neighbors with the data that we have on our programs. There were 17 calls of service in the last year to HANU. We also shared with them that those 17 calls of service were not for serious incidents. They could have been for anything. It could have been somebody that came into one of our programs that was harmed before getting there, and we supported them and encouraged them to file a report themselves and called law enforcement to our house. It could be because parole had asked that they have support in coming to pick somebody else back up, or probation for that matter. It could have been because we have called and said, hey, we've got some concerns here of drug abuse. Those calls for services are like any number of things, but they weren't serious incidents. And oftentimes, like I said, they are also the resident themselves calling to report things or to utilize the community services that are available to them, which is our local law enforcement.
But not one with related to violence?
Not a single one.
So Tessa, someone mentioned the dispensing of medications. Do you have the authority and ability through medical people that are on staff to dispense any medications?
We do not. At our level of care, you have to be able to manage your own medications, right? That's the level of care that we're at. If you need somebody to administer medications to you, then you are beyond the level of care that we're able to provide. So it'd be no different than somebody living in their home that is prescribed these medications. The step that we do take, because we do have more than what you might think of just like within your household, right? You, your spouse, your children. So everybody is provided with lock boxes, and when they move in, they're provided a key to their room and a key to their lock box. They are asked that their medications are kept inside that lock box that only they have the key to, so that other people don't have access to them.
So do you know if any of those individuals would have the ability to take scheduled or narcotics?
You know, I can't.
As part of their prescription?
Yeah, I can't
protocols?
speak to that. That's between them and their medical provider, what prescriptions that they might or might not be on, and their medical provider decides if that's the appropriate prescription for them or not. If there's a history of drug abuse, I think oftentimes medical providers do not approve those things. But again, that's not at our level of care.
Okay. And how many facilities does MHA have?
So we've had 3 houses in Lincoln. We currently have 2. Our 5-bedroom we moved out of and moved into a 20-bedroom. That's our transitional living house. And then the Kea house is also a 4-bedroom house.
Okay. And of those facilities, how many of them are within 400 feet of a school?
So the Hanu house, before it was moved to the 20-bed, when it was a 5-bedroom house, was I think there was like 1 or 2 houses between us and the elementary school right there on Calvert Street. And then
You
where
no
Hanu.
longer at that location, though.
What's that? We operated there for several years. When we moved to a larger facility, now we share a parking lot with a nursing home, with the Lexington Assisted Living Home, who also had some of the similar concerns, right? Like we have a lot of elderly population living here, and what would that look like? And we've navigated that relationship with them to the point where now we do community events with them. We've done celebrated 4th of July. We've done pumpkin painting. Like they have hired some of our residents to come work for them. We have a real, they donate when people pass away and they don't have family members to pick up their belongings. They've donated those to our house for our individuals that are going to be moving out on their own. So we really have like worked really closely with our neighbors to figure that out. In addition to the Lexington, there's another assisted living across the street, and catty corner there is a daycare from the Hanu home as well.
Any other questions? Did you say everything you wanted to say?
I-
Address everything you wanted to address?
I hope so.
Tessa, I
Yeah.
just have a quick question. As I get into the difference of the uses and the applications, you kind of alluded to it, that your original application was denied for transitional living. So a key part of that is for transitional living, which this is not what's on the agenda, but that's providing for the care and short or long-term overnight occupancy of more than 3 unrelated persons, any of whom require supervision while under a program alternative to imprisonment. Okay? Do you have any residents with your application that fit that definition, that are serving out their prison term in a home alternative to a corrections facility?
Right. Do you mean the home that we're
I'm
proposing
saying
to open,
what
right?
we are reviewing in the agenda today.
Yeah. No, that was my understanding, is that we would not be able to house those individuals, which is where the conversation came up about the transitional living in the future, that there, one day we would sure hope that maybe we could, get enough support
Okay.
from neighbors to reapply, but today we understand that is not
And you
a part
understand
of
that is not an option of
Correct.
what you are asking for today?
Correct.
Okay, so then we are no longer talking about transitional living. That is a use permit that would have required approval by the city council. That was denied. The application before us back in August agenda as well as today is for small group living disabled. And so that is for the care. And you could sit down. I don't have any questions for you further, Tessa. Thank you. So small group living disabled, defined as a dwelling unit housing on a weekly or longer basis at least 4 but no more than 8 unrelated persons with a handicap, not including resident managers or house parents, and not defined as a family. The zoning code also defines handicap with respect to a person, the following: a physical or mental impairment which substantially limits one or more such person's major life activities, a record of having such impairment, or being regarded as having such an impairment, but such term does not include current illegal use of or addiction to a controlled substance. The key there is current use of. The small group living disabled use type requires a conditional use permit. That is what we are here for, okay? That is approval or denial by the planning board. That does not go on to city council. That use type is permitted in every residential zoning district. If this property was zoned as everyone else's properties who spoke here today, it would be permitted. There would be no permits required from planning board. There might not even be permits required through our building and permits unless they were, making changes to the level that required a building permit, electrical permit, so on and so on. It's the fact that there is GC zoning, then it requires the conditional use permit, which we're here today. So I have a question for the law department to confirm, but my understanding, the definition of a disability is the same in our zoning code, our reasonable accommodation policy, state law, and federal regulations. Ms. Taylor from the law department, is that accurate?
Jennifer Taylor, Law Department. That is correct. Our reasonable accommodation policy has the same definition as it exists in our code. It is confirmed in Nebraska state law, which is the same as is in 42 USC 12102 federal regulations definition of disability. All 4 are the same.
Thank you. I don't think I have any further comments. except that we touched on this in the pre-meeting, the concept of the city developing a reasonable accommodation policy and actually clarification and changes to our zoning code regarding many of these use types, including small group living, disabled, came about because of a lawsuit. And the city had been sued, and we were required as a part of that to adopt the reasonable accommodation policy as well as making changes to our zoning code. So, there's a lot of history that goes back. That is also why we have specific criteria that lays out, if there's another facility within 600 feet, if it was a permitted use, perhaps it needs to go to Planning Board and City Council for a special use permit, but it is still allowed. And so that's, we have a lot of criteria that we list in the recommendation reports, including this one, that we review as part of the application, making sure that it checks all the boxes and fits all those criteria. So obviously you can have as much discussion as you see fit or ask other questions, but I'll read the city's recommendation, and that is approval. Staff recommends approval of a conditional use permit to allow small group living disabled facility with a request for reasonable accommodation, subject to the 4 conditions in the recommendation report.
Is there any other comments or discussion?
Yeah, I'm not going to make the motion, but if anybody is going to make the motion to approve the recommendation by Planning Department, I would also like to include in there that they will not allow, for this conditional use permit, will not allow registered sex offenders as residents as one of the conditions in there as well. So if anybody's making that motion, be willing to add that clause in there. But I'm not going to make the motion.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Do we have a motion?
I guess I just want to make one comment as to all this discussion is going on. I've been reading through the documentation. Can you talk louder? I can't hear you. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not making a recommendation at this point. I'm just making a comment and observation. The principal action here that is of concern to me is the reasonable accommodation statute. And when you look through the synopsis of the Civil Rights Act, the Rehabilitation Act, the American Disabilities Act, Civil Rights Act, Nebraska Fair Housing Act, all those things appear to me that it's very difficult to deny this without incurring some risk. These people have to be accommodated somewhere, and this is a reasonable accommodation for it. And I don't object to your comment about the convicted sexual predators or whatever. Although it's somewhat redundant, as they can't live anywhere. We're only 250 feet away from a school, which is not a place where they could be. So that's just my observation. So.
And Tessa did go on record that she would not be opposed to that.
Correct. Correct.
Before I ask for a motion, Jennifer Taylor was just saying that step 2 that I read through with parts of the city do not apply in this situation. The city has already looked through it, and it's not a problem for the city as far as the burdens of what step 2 lists.
So
do we?
Maybe a little clarification on that then. When you say the city, Jennifer, if you wouldn't mind.
Jennifer Taylor, Law Department. So as Chair Rosenbaum indicated, step 2 of the analysis under a reasonable accommodation is obviously after you've determined that the application meets the requirements in step 1, the application must be approved unless the accommodation would impose undue financial or administrative burden upon the city. It would constitute a fundamental alteration of the city's laws, policies, or processes, or in the city's efforts to comply with the spirit of the request, an alternative accommodation is approved. None of those 3 actually apply. Correct.
Maybe I did a poor job of explaining.
It's a difficult interpretation of,
Yeah.
so I just need to clarify.
Okay. Now then, any other comments? Okay, do we have a motion? Are you looking for your recommendation, Dave?
Yeah.
Okay. You intend on making a
Yeah,
motion?
I will make a motion. I move that the approval of the conditional use permit to allow a small group living disabled facility with a request for reasonable accommodation, subject to the 4 conditions of the staff report, with the addition of that no, you have the words?
Will not allow
Without allowing registered sex offenders as residents.
So those 5 conditions.
Yes, 5 conditions.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Tondel?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
No.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
No.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved, 5-2.
Just a comment for the folks that, regarding some of the concerns that you had about whether these people are disabled or not. I think Eric clarified the distinction between this case and the last application. But the other thing is, as a conditional use permit, if there's any violation of the stipulation of this, then they are subject to review and possible revocation. So it's not as though this is just a get out of jail free card, so to speak. So if there is a violation down the way, then there is a remedy to revoke this permit, if you will.
Okay, we're taking 4 and 5 together.
Yes, we will hear 4 and 5 together.
Agenda item number 4, case C3-24-237, applicant, Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha, request approval of the Mason Place Rose TIF redevelopment project. Location southwest of 33rd and Mason Street. Agenda item number 5, case C3-15-283, applicant, Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha, request approval of an amendment to the Uptown District TIF redevelopment project plan. Location southwest of 33rd and Mason Streets. And Don, you're up.
Yeah, Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning Department, and my presentation will address both items 4 and 5 on the agenda. And that's because they both involve the same property, and that's this development site here in yellow at 33rd and Mason Streets. Item 5 is an amendment to the Uptown District. That's an approved TIF. That's a multiple phase, multiple site TIF, and the amendment will pull this particular property out of that multi-phased TIF, approved TIF project. And the purpose of that is so that it can be developed as a standalone TIF project by a different entity. And that brings us to item 4 on the agenda, Mason Place Rose TIF project. It's a residential infill development. This property is presently vacant at 33rd and Mason Street. The proposal is for a townhome project that will provide 15 new market rate for sale townhome units arranged in 2 structures run parallel to each other on the site, steeply sloped site. These townhomes will be 3 stories in height. Each unit will have a 2-stall garage. The developer is Milestone Management, LLC, managed by Alex Jensen. Total investment in the neighborhood is over $6 million. The TIF support for the project is $1,099,237. This project's been approved by the TIF committee. It's an appropriate land use for the area, and it complies with the city's master plan. There's a rendering, and we're asking for your approval.
How many units?
15 units.
Thank you.
Any other proponents?
Alex Jensen with Milestone Development. Yeah, I think this is a great project. Really excited about how it turned out, and I think it'll be a great fit for the neighborhood. We've met with the neighborhood twice now, right after initial concept development, and we had a good turnout. It was on August 5th, a great turnout. There was a couple concerns. One was parking. Another was noise and short-term rentals. We're not asking for any on-street parking. Every townhome has two garage stalls, so all resident parking is off the street. And then we told them that we're going to put in the covenants for the HOA, quiet hours after a certain time, and a limit on short-term rentals, or prohibition of short-term rentals. So they were really pleased. We had a follow-up meeting last Wednesday, the 25th. Not many people showed up that time. Just one resident who's right behind us, who's immediately affected by our development. But they said that if their work schedule allowed, they would show up for in support of this project. So we really engaged the neighborhood, and everyone seems very pleased. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, close public hearing. Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, so on the consent agenda was the plat and the PUR that were approved, so this goes along with those two entitlements. We appreciate working with the applicant. There's been some back and forth, so we're really pleased with the product that they're bringing forward. You know, there's a great need for sale products, so we're excited about that. And a handful of years ago, we had this site, and there was quite a bit of opposition, so good job with discussions with the neighborhood. For agenda item number 4, staff recommends approval.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second. Sorry. We have a motion and a second. Kathy, please report the vote.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Tondel? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved, 7-0.
For agenda item 5, this is the amendment to the previously approved TIF plan. Staff recommends approval.
We have a motion.
Motion approved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Tondel?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved, 7-0.
Agenda item number 6, case C3-24-239, applicant Planning Department, on behalf of the City of Omaha, request approval of the Green Lake Midtown Apartments TIF redevelopment project plan. Location 3511 Howard Street. And Don, you're up again.
Thank you, Chairman Rosenbaum. Good afternoon, Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning Department. This is the Green Lake Midtown Apartments TIF project. It's another residential infill redevelopment. It's on a vacant lot at 3511 Howard Street in Midtown, not all that far from the project you just looked at. This proposal, however, is for an apartment building. Be new construction, apartment building with 15 market rate rental units. Building is 3 stories in height. There'll be 7 on-site parking stalls and another 3 parking stalls in the adjacent right-of-way. The developer is Green Lake Development, LLC, managed by Justin Spooner. Total investment in the neighborhood is about $2.9 million. The TIF support for the project is $418,139. This project has been approved by the TIF committee. It's an appropriate land use for the location, and it complies with the city's master plan. And we ask for your approval.
Okay, thank you, Don. Any other proponents?
Good afternoon, Planning Board members. Justin Spooner, Green Lake Development, LLC, 11516 Miracle Hills Drive, Suite 400. Not too much more to add onto what Don said, except that we have been in front of this board before last year to seek rezoning, so thank you for that, and informed you all that we did meet with the neighborhood at that time. We've also met with numerous individual neighbors in the neighborhood to make sure that we've alleviated any concerns, and there wasn't any at that time of rezoning, and we ask for your support in this redevelopment agreement today.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Justin. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any additional comments, questions from the board?
Well, the department did work with the developer last year with the TOD rezoning and the PUR. We're supportive of the project and recommend approval.
I heard the voice from. Where did that come from?
We got to keep these guys on their toes, make sure they're paying attention. Thanks.
All right. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Morris?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Tondal?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Agenda item number 7, case C3-24-242. Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha request approval of amendment to Chapter 55 zoning to adopt new floodplain maps, allow kennels in industrial districts, allow an accessory dwelling unit in the AG district, and modify the resource extraction use type description. Location, City of Omaha in the 3-mile extraterritorial jurisdiction. Eric?
Yeah, so typically we'd have layovers on the consent agenda, but because we had notified so many neighborhood associations, I just wanted to speak briefly on the record. So this Chapter 55 amendment would adopt new floodplain maps that were just released by the U.S. Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, and are required to be adopted by City of Omaha as a member of the National Flood Insurance Program. There would also be a few other proposed changes which would allow the kennel use type with approval of a conditional use permit in LI, GI, and HI districts, as well as allowing an accessory dwelling unit within the Ag district with approval of a conditional use permit, and then finally a small edit to the resource extraction use type. However, we have a recommendation for layover. As part of zoning code amendments, we are required by state law to notify every registered neighborhood association with the City of Omaha. And there unfortunately was a technical error that occurred, and there were a handful of associations that were not notified. So we caught that beyond the point that we could take this off the agenda. So we will bring this back in the future to fix that error.
Any other proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Seeing none, close public hearing. Comments, questions?
Recommend layover.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Motion to lay over.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Tondal?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
We'll take agenda items number 8 and 10 together. Case C3-24-243, applicant Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha request approval of amendment to the future land use element of the city's master plan from low-density residential to high-density residential. Location, northwest of 32nd and Y Street. Agenda item number 10, case C10-24-181, C12-24-182. Applicant, Southside Redevelopment Corporation. Request preliminary and final plat approval of Drews Hill Replat 1, a minor plat inside city limits with approval of a rezoning from R535 to R7. Property is located within an NCE overlay district. Location, northwest of 32nd and Y Streets. Ms. Kelly, is she presenting or? Oh, I'm sorry.
Terry Morrison with Earhart Griffin and Associates. I'm the civil engineer working for the developer. I can answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Any other proponents?
Hi, Bill Lukash, 903 South 184th Avenue Circle, Elkhorn, Nebraska. Apologies. Just a little bit about the Y Street townhomes. I know you know a little bit about them already, but this development is part of the CNI South redevelopment effort. The City of Omaha and the Omaha Housing Authority, with their partners Canopy South and Brinshore Development, who I work for, received a $50 million grant from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development to redevelop this site. As planned, this is a 14 townhome development located between 32nd, around 32nd and 33rd and Y Street. Pardon me, the site is within walking distance of a bus route, Upland Park, Miguel Keith Park, and Indian Hill Elementary School. As planned, of course, it is 14 three-bedroom units, 12 townhomes, and 1 stacked building with 2 units. The lower unit in that stacked building is accessible. All units will be designed to and built to the same contemporary look and market rate standard. 11 of those units will be available to households earning 80% area median income or less. The remaining will be market rate units. The development will be supported by 7 project-based vouchers provided by the Omaha Housing Authority. That doesn't necessarily mean that we will have 7 families from Southside Terrace move there, but they have the opportunity, the choice to move there if they choose to. I don't know if I have too many other notes, but so yes, of course, the most important one. We did meet with neighborhood residents and the Choice Neighborhood Housing and Implementation Committee last Wednesday about this development. That was our first outreach effort. We did receive a lot of comments from that organization and from neighbors about the likes and dislikes about what we proposed at that time. We are going to take those comments to heart, look at what we can do to make the site look and work a little bit better based on the feedback that we got. We're in the process of doing that. We don't have an answer right now about that, what we're going to do, but we are going to regroup and meet again with the neighborhood and the Housing and Implementation Committee later in October. I think the 19th is that date, and we will continue to engage with the neighborhood about the development as we move along. But for right now, this is our very early stages of this development, and we're still working through design and all those types of things. So.
And this will be a variety of rates, market rates, low income housing as well?
Yeah, so there will be 3 market rate units. There will be, the rest will be available to households earning 80% AMI or less, area median income or less. Those rents, or out of those 11 units, 7 of them will be reserved for people that live at Southside Terrace now that will receive a project-based voucher if they choose to live there. We have one development in North Omaha where nobody wishes currently to move back there from Spencer Homes, the former Spencer Homes. So that scenario could exist. I hope not. I hope we do have people that want to return to this area. It's a very nice area. It's ideal for families, we believe. But it could happen that we won't. But
so what happens to those units then if no one?
They will be filled by qualifying households that want to live there, yeah.
And you give a certain amount of time for them to decide whether or not they want to move in?
Correct.
Who's going to retain ownership of these?
Ownership, it falls under an ownership entity. I don't think we've established that yet, but it'll be the ownership entity will be controlled by the Housing Authority, Brinshore Development, Canopy South. And then managed by the Selden Company. We have a property manager take care of all those properties.
Did we get the money yet?
What's that?
Did we get the money yet?
Money for what? I'm sorry.
Grant from.
Oh yeah, we received that a couple years ago, and we thankfully we were awarded a funding opportunity came up rather quickly this spring called Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funds, small rental projects, and we received a small amount of money, like $1.65 million, to support the development of this property. So we had to jump on it if we wanted to access it because those funds are gone now, the disaster recovery funds. So I'm thankful that we were able to get it. But yeah, funding's in place.
And when will it start then?
I'm sorry?
When will the project start?
We'd like to close in the first quarter of 2025 with construction beginning shortly after.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other proponents?
Good afternoon, Cesar Garcia, 2419 North 149th Street, Omaha, Nebraska. The executive director of Southside Redevelopment Corporation. We do business as Canopy South. We're a community development organization, nonprofit, working on the revitalization of neighborhoods in South Omaha. We currently are the owner of the lot. I just want to add a couple things. You know, we received some CDBG funding for the completions on some of the roads in that area that are needed to be able to develop this housing. It is very important for us as a community development organization to get on record that the community is at the center of every decision that we make. And when we had a meeting, I was not present, but I got all the notes, and there were some concerns about how the building looks like or perhaps what's going to go on there. I have to tell you that this group jumped on a call right away and made sure that we were addressing all those requests. So I wish, you know, there was perhaps some of them here, because I always advocate for community. No one is here today, but they are the experts. That's what we always say. And we will not be here doing any work if we will not put them there in the center. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'll close public hearing. Additional comments, questions? Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, so I think the team covered most of the items. You know, we have an existing NCE, Neighborhood Conservation Enhancement Overlay District, that's in place for this property, as well as the other properties within the Choice Neighborhood Implementation South Grant. So this is the only property that's zoned R5. So everything else is R7, which is what the NCE requires. So that is the reasoning for the future land use amendment, as well as the rezoning to R7. So as it was discussed previously, we're not locked down to this plan, but we're showing, as is the case with any rezoning, you know, the renderings, which we're going to work on and continue to work on with the team, as well as the site plan. And, you know, the NCE plan is working really well, we think, for all of these phases. We've incorporated everything we've learned through the PUR process and been able to apply that to a document, but it, you know, so it has requirements that this site will need to comply with, and it incorporates all those ideas from PUR plans, but it's nice because it has a little more flexibility that we can do. So specifically for agenda item 8 is the future land use map amendment. Staff recommends approval.
Do we have a motion?
Motion approved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record.
Pate?
Yes.
Tondal?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Regarding agenda item 10, staff recommends approval of the rezoning from R535 to R7, approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 7 conditions in the report, approval of the final plat subject to submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement if necessary prior to forwarding to City Council.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the rezoning from R535 to R7. Approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 7 conditions in staff report. Approval of final plat subject to, I guess, acceptable final subdivision agreement if necessary prior to forwarding to City Council.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Tondal?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Agenda item number 15, case C12-24-234. Applicant Dunham House, Inc. requests preliminary plat approval of Dunham House, a subdivision inside city limits, location 7808 North 60th Street. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Ben Drews, 10836 Old Mill Road with Thompson, Dreesen, and Dorner. Here to answer any questions about the project.
Sorry, what was the name?
Ben Drews.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions for Ben? Okay, thank you. Any other proponents?
They're all observers. They're all
No,
observers.
sure don't need to.
I wanna
Only
wake
if,
you up,
only
Doug.
if you feel inspired or you're a politician that can't. Oh, I'm sorry, Alan.
I think it's a good, positive word. Others have a different point of view. My name is Hal Dobb. I live at 314 North 97th Court, Omaha, Nebraska 68114. My comment, besides I hope your familiarity with this project and the great neighborhood meeting we had with 21 or 25, all in favor of it. Some were here at previous item on your agenda. But I'd like someone to move to amend the recommendation to name the street Dunham Street or Dunham Circle, or a name appropriate to the project, as opposed to a name that has no relevance to it and is not marketable relative to the neighborhood and the use of the project. So on your approval, if you can amend the city's recommendation for approval, assuming that's going to happen, to let the city council know that you believe that the street should be named after the Medal of Honor winner after whom the project is named. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Al.
Okay, anyone else? Proponent? Nope. Any opponents? Nope. Close public hearing. Additional comments, questions from the board? Eric, did you want to address Hal's?
Yeah, I'll just touch on, you know, the city's comment in the recommendation report about the naming of the new east-west street. So, you know, Chapter 34 of the Omaha Municipal Code has a chart basically that lays out, you know, streets that are in our system that, you know, it goes through all of the streets, basically 100, 200, 300 south of Dodge, so on until the county line. And then there's also a table for properties both north and south of Dodge. And so, you know, the reasoning behind that is uniformity throughout the city as you know, safety and you know, police and fire. I know that maybe perhaps GPS has advanced quite a ways, but that's the reasoning for our comment. Now, there is another option that we feel is appropriate for the naming of a street after an individual, and that is based on Chapter 27 of public property. And what that does, that came about in 2011, and there's a whole set of criteria. Some of the options are commemorative, but there is also a process in place for a renaming of an actual street. And we believe something like this to be named after an individual. Obviously, you know, Jason Dunham gave the ultimate sacrifice and, you know, could only say great things about it. The city does have a process in place for naming streets after individuals or just renaming streets. So we believe it should go through that process after the plat has gone through and has been recorded. Involved with that, there's a city naming committee that includes, you know, the planning director serves as the chair. It includes public works director, police chief, fire chief, parks and rec director, library director, and then 3 citizens appointed by the mayor. After the city naming committee, it would come on to planning board and then city council. And there's specific criteria that are in place for what an application needs to entail. So we feel that is the appropriate step kind of down the road is where the city stands.
How long of a process usually is that, Eric?
Probably about 3 months. Yeah.
And one of the conditions, conditions in here is, number 10 is to change the proposed street name to Sheffield Street. So
Yeah.
why is?
Well, so Sheffield, so there would be some other options. You know, I could look, there's some other ranges and some other street names. That's the specific distance north of Dodge that would fit in where this proposed east-west street is. So that's kind of our naming convention. We utilize this chart. But there are some other options that are close within Sheffield, but that's obviously not Jason Dunham Drive. So, you know, I don't think the applicant would want King Street or, you know, whatever those other options are, but we'd be willing to work with them on those.
But in theory, by the time they get to the point where the construction work is done, that could be already done. Construction starts next. The renaming of the street.
You're saying after the recording of the plat?
If after we take this action, and they simultaneously decide to go to that through the formal process of getting the street renamed, that only takes several months. So by the time any construction work would be done, that street would already be renamed to the name they would like.
Yeah, it could feasibly, it could line up timing wise that way, yes.
Do you have the authority to do it right now?
Sir, just a second. I closed the public hearing, But if you want to come up and make a comment, give your name and address, and if you can keep it short.
I'll keep it as short as I can. My name is John Folsom. I'm the executive director of Dunham House. I live at 1719 North 60th Street, Omaha, Nebraska, 68104. I appreciate Eric's comments, but he's wrong. If you think there's any order to Omaha street naming, you're all insane. There's no order whatsoever. And all you got to do is pick up a map of Omaha and follow the streets. For example, let's go to Sheffield. Who is Sheffield?
I think we're trying to bring some order to it.
No, but you're not. You've got Mecca Drive out here that leads into Mike Fahey, which should be Webster, which continues on, meanders out west. Sheffield, as a matter of fact, is East Omaha, meanders around, runs into 54th Avenue, and stops. Picks up. I think it's on Grand Street. Picks up into Grand. Sheffield doesn't reappear until 84th. So you have that intervening for 30 blocks. Sheffield, you've got one. Grand Street disappears for about 2 blocks, turns into Larimore at 168th, then continues on being Grand again, right? So I think that given the fact that we're talking about a 40-acre parcel, this road that we're talking about stubbing in from 60th Street will not go anywhere. It can't continue west because you're not going to tear down houses on the road that abuts, Fairhaven or Fairway Drive. You're not going to continue Sheffield into the Omaha Country Club property. It doesn't make any sense, gentlemen. We're paying a tribute. You have the authority to do this, do you not? There's the attorney. Ask her. Do you have the authority to let the city council decide what to do with this thing instead of a lot of legalese and I charter this, charter that? When you want to do something, you can do it. Just do it.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Did you want to add anything?
The planning board has the authority to change that recommendation for number 10. It's not what the city's advising, but you have that authority to make the recommendation. Ultimately, it's the city council who decides.
Any further comments, discussion, questions?
I understand your position, but what harm would there be if we did make that recommendation today? Is it precedence?
Well, what if every 8-acre plat that came in just chose their street name? And yeah, you can make the case, look, this is special, it's a great project. Yeah, I admit it. We have over 245 square miles in our zoning jurisdiction, and, I guess, we follow the codes and regulations in place, so.
And there is a clear process in place.
There is a process. We put that process in place after the Mike Fahey Street because there wasn't a clear process. In fact, I helped write that code in Chapter 27 that laid out that process. So I'm very familiar with the process and what the proper protocol is.
All right. Everybody feel good here? Good. All right. Did you want to make your recommendation?
Yes.
Or have you already?
Nope, I did not. Staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 10 conditions in the recommendation report.
Do we have a motion?
I'll motion to approve the preliminary plat subject to the 10 conditions in the recommendation report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Tondel?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Last month's pre-meeting, September's pre-meeting minutes and public meeting minutes. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve September's pre-meeting and public meeting minutes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Tondel?
Yes.
Abstain.
I wasn't there.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved.
Do we have a motion for adjournment?
Motion adjourned.
Second.
Kathy, we have a motion and a second. Please record the vote.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Should be as lengthy as
Rosacker?
Yes.
Tondel?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.